In a realm of enigmatic creatures and cohabiting humans, the stakes are high, and possession of a unique and formidable beast is the ultimate prize. The most prized beasts are so potent that they could obliterate entire continents with a single strike. At the pinnacle of this world stands a youthful figure known as Su, whose ascent to the top is all due to his rare and powerful beast, the lunar butterfly. Legend has it that this rare creature possesses the ability to traverse time, reverse fate, and is utterly invincible. The magnificence of the lunar butterfly has elevated Su to a godlike status, and his name echoes through the cosmos like a cosmic symphony. His eyes are truly captivating, with crescent shapes emanating a radiant and dazzling luminosity within the pupils. He embodies the essence of this world, revered and idolized by multitudes as the king of the moon. His presence commands awe and adoration, and his very name evokes a sense of otherworldly majesty and power. On a day lit up by the sun's rays, as dragons soared through the skies, a youthful man sat before his computer, pondering over the mind-boggling information he had just received. Beads of sweat trickled down his forehead, drenching his back, while his fingers quivered uncontrollably. It was then that he stumbled upon a shocking realization: he himself was the fabled Lunar King, Su. Listen up, everyone. Have I got a tale for you? There's no need for a truck kun or a tragic fall from a building or reincarnated into a tiny pupa, in this story. Instead, we have the captivating tale of Su, a young lad plucked straight from our beloved 21st century Earth and thrust into the wondrous world of beast tamers. But wait, there's more. Su has even inherited the memories of the original host. Isn't that just juicy? How did it all come to pass, you ask? It's a tragic tale indeed. The mighty and invincible Lunar King met his end most embarrassingly. He simply rolled off his bed and plunged to his doom. Talk about a messy way to go, am I right? But just like in all those isekai anime he binged on, our MC quickly summoned the system to check his status. Let us all take a moment of silence for poor Su, who discovered he was only a one-star beast tamer, with a measly flicker butterfly as his companion. What kind of sorry stats were those? Wasn't he supposed to be the Lunar King, for crying out loud? In a world of beast tamers, Su was more like a beast tickler. After 5 solid minutes of cursing and protesting his ill fate, Su realized that everything in his memories about himself was a lie. He recalled all the heroic stories of how the Lunar King had become the top freshman at the Beast Tamer Academy, how he was worshipped by over 1 million people, and how he had earned the coveted title of the Lunar King. Su couldn't believe his luck. The original host, a delusional fool who taunted the famous 8-star Emperor Sangyu, calling her an old fat woman, which resulted in the emperor had declared a battle with him in 3 years. If the original host had a brain, it would be the size of a pea. And not even a fancy pea, more like a sad, wrinkled pea from the discount bin. The original host wasn't exactly lying when he boasted about his power. He really believed that his flicker butterfly was a legendary beast in disguise and that it would only reveal its true form in times of desperation. He even had a catchphrase for his fangirls: as long as you believe, time will come. Su couldn't help but facepalm and sigh. Maybe only Sneeko could relate to this kind of delusion. He shook his head and turned his attention to his companion. With a flash of light, Su, his flicker butterfly. It was a cute little thing, with big wings, gem-like pupils, and silky antennas. But as Su quickly realized, the cuteness wasn't going to help him survive in this cruel world. Su's companion was cute enough to make even a demon blush, but it was about as useful as a wet noodle in an actual battle. He broke down in tears, and the butterfly flapped its wings in confusion, trying to comfort him. There, it seemed to say. We'll figure something out. Maybe we can find a giant fly swatter or something. Su remembered that the original host had a mysterious item. What was it again? Lunar Book. Su chanted the name, and a book appeared in his hands. It was a book with illustrated pictures ranging from low-ranked beasts to supreme-ranked beasts, like a gacha system, where Su is required to come in contact with the animals in real life to have it activated in the book. With the newfound revelation, Su is now much confidence, knowing that there will be plenty of opportunity. Su hastily dressed and stepped out of his dormitory, eager to explore the Beast Tamer Academy. In the student residence, a cat girl named Bai Who is playing with a bunny on the grass? Her friend, Sandra, stood behind her, watching the scene with disapproval. Sandra was worried that Bai's habit of playing with low-ranked creatures would ruin her chances of contracting a powerful beast. Bai shrugged off her friend's concerns and promised that she is just playing around with the Moonlight Bunny. Sandra couldn't help but gush about her idol, the Lunar King. Legend says that he never comes in contact with average creatures, not even mentioning the mid and high-ranked creatures, even the supreme beasts he will turn a blind eye to. But before she could finish her sentence, the Moonlight Bunny hopped its way toward a lone figure in the distance. It was none other than Su, the Lunar King himself. The two girls' hearts raced as they watched from afar, their faces flushed with admiration. Inside Su's mind, a few inappropriate thoughts popped up upon seeing the cat girl. He quickly shook them off, feeling embarrassed. He turned around and walked towards the Moon Lab, where he hoped to unlock some new beasts. As he strolled deeper into the building, he noticed countless light bubbles floating toward him. He tapped one of them with his finger, causing it to burst, and informed that he have now unlocked new low-ranked beasts. As Su led the pack of new beasts deeper into the lab, their heightened senses suddenly picked up on something and they bolted in the opposite direction, leaving Su alone to confront a colossal door. Sensing that he may have stumbled upon the territory of a mid-ranked beast, Su bravely pushed open the door and cautiously stepped inside. The room was surprisingly empty, with only crystal lights hanging from the ceiling and a striking symbol of a half-moon in the center. As he drew closer, Su was astonished to find a magnificent white flower deer lounging comfortably on a plush pillow. With curiosity piqued, Su began to peruse the introductory materials, discovering that the white flower deer was a mid-ranked lunar-typed creature. Just then, two curious students happened upon the scene and were equally stunned by the sight of such a majestic beast in the Moon Lab. One particularly horny furry student couldn't help but remark on the deer's stunning appearance, eliciting some rather salacious and inappropriate thoughts from his close friend. The white flower deer clearly overheard their inappropriate conversation and was not at all amused. The horny student continued to spew out inappropriate thoughts, but suddenly, a wave of water dropped onto him, drenching him like a hapless chicken. The students turned around, bewildered and staring at the majestic creature. The deer was not impressed and displayed a rather angry expression, causing the students to feel frightened and scurry out of the Moon Lab. Su, however, remained behind, taking a closer look at the stunning creature before him. For a brief moment, he could understand why there were furries. The deer and Su locked eyes, and the deer was surprised to see Su's crescent eyes. It walked closer to examine him, getting so close that Su could feel its warm breath. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, Su quickly summoned the lunar book, but the deer jumped backward, startled by the sudden movement. As Su stood there in shock, he realized that the deer he had stumbled upon was no ordinary Bambi. It was a heavenly lunar, a supreme-ranked beast that could easily wipe out an entire kingdom. Su's heart skipped a beat as he imagined becoming the creature's next snack. But then he had a revelation. The academy must have had a good reason for allowing such a dangerous beast on campus. Perhaps it was actually gentle and had a meek temperament. Either way, Su is not going to take the risk. He decided to play it cool and complimented the beauty of the mid-ranked white flower deer, hoping to sneak his way out of danger. He emphasized the word mid-ranked loud so the deer could hear him. As he made his way towards the exit, Su couldn't help but wonder what kind of madman would allow a walking nuke like the heavenly lunar to roam free. As soon as Su closed the lab door, he ran for his life, but as he sprinted down the hallway, he realized that he wasn't being chased after all. Turned out the heavenly lunar was more interested in his unique crescent-shaped eyes. The deer then walked toward its bed, pulled out a smartphone, and started searching for a human with crescent eyes. The deer had quite interesting search history too. Su walked back to his student residence, his mind still reeling from his encounter with the heavenly lunar. He knew better than to be fooled by the deer's innocent-looking appearance. One wrong move and he could end up as deer food. As he pulled out his lunar book and began experimenting with his powers, he couldn't help but wonder about the Moonlight Bunny he had seen earlier that day. Why hadn't the moonlight affected it as it should have? Maybe the bunny was just putting on a cute act and was secretly a powerful supreme beast. With a steady hand, Su reached out to the bunny. The lunar book displayed its name and informed him that the bunny had a lunar deficiency, meaning it couldn't absorb energy from the moonlight and was only strong during a full moon. Sue couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor bunny. As Sue peacefully dozed off, a gasp echoed through the night not far from his location. Bai, a young girl, stared in shock as her phone and snack fell to the ground. Her eyes remained glued to the scene before her as the Lunar King, a figure of great power and status, touched a lowly ranked moonlight bunny. Had she just uncovered the Moon King's deepest secret? Returning to her dorm in a daze, Bai sought solace in the company of her friend, Sandra. The shock had not yet worn off as she speculated if the Lunar King had a fondness for small creatures. Sandra's perplexed expression made Bai wonder if her friend thought she was unwell. Laughing off the notion, Bai ran into her room, bubbling with excitement at the thought of her discovery. Meanwhile, Sue was oblivious to the commotion outside, his mind already drifting off into a peaceful slumber. As he opened his eyes, a figure stood before him. It wasn't a human, and the aura surrounding the woman was more powerful than the heavenly lunar. Sue's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the mysterious woman before him. The figure slowly approached him, he froze to the ground. Suddenly, the woman had one knee on the ground, showing her respect to the Lunar King. Sue browsed through the original host's memories and remembered that the woman was one of the 4 beasts belonging to one of his core members from the Double Moon clan. There was a moment of awkwardness as he tried to remember the woman's name. He broke the silence with a cough, asking why she was here. The woman was here to report that the remnants of the Black Moon clan have been causing some problems in the central continent and have been having close contact with the Lunar God clan. He turned around, pulled out his phone, and started searching for the Black Moon clan. According to the search engine, the Black Moon clan had massive influence up north but was completely destroyed by the newly risen Double Moon clan 3 years ago. As it turned out, the original host had intentionally blocked out all memories of the Black Moon clan, considering them to be nothing more than a weak and insignificant group. However, the woman emphasized that while the Black Moon clan may not pose a significant threat, their association with the Lunar God clan is cause for concern. The Lunar God clan, unlike the run-of-the-mill guilds that littered the central continent, had been a true powerhouse for millennia, exerting their dominance over the entire realm with an iron fist. Their influence was pervasive and their reach extensive, making them a force to be reckoned with. As time wore on, the Lunar God clan's dominance dwindled and they were usurped by the newly emerged Double Moon clan in a mere 3 years. Now, the Double Moon clan is gearing up for an all-out war against their former overlords. With Sue's approval, the woman's eyes glinted with excitement as she hurried back to spread this explosive news. Sue grinned as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his precious lunar book. He had collected enough lunar creatures to finally unlock the coveted gacha system. With a few swift clicks, Sue could now summon a random lunar beast of any rank. And if he wasn't satisfied with the creature that appeared, he could simply return it and be reimbursed with valuable experience points. Without hesitation, Sue's finger hovered over the summon button. He took a deep breath and clicked, unleashing a dazzling light from the book. The light signaled the arrival of a new lunar beast, a high-ranked, transparent moon shadow. Sue was initially excited by its rarity and unique support skills, but upon closer inspection, determined to level up, Sue chose to return the creature and gain some much-needed experience points. As he watched the book glow and shimmer, Sue felt a surge of anticipation. He was so close to becoming a level 2 beast tamer, he could practically taste it. Sue flopped onto his bed, staring up at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the image of the majestic deer he had seen earlier that day. The creature had captured his heart, and he couldn't help but wonder if there was any way to make it his loyal companion. As he drifted off to sleep, Sue's dreams were filled with visions of him and the deer. The next morning, the deer was rudely awakened by the sound of loud banging and construction. Confused and disoriented, it stumbled around trying to find familiar fixtures and furnishings. But everything was gone. That's when it saw her, a woman caretaker with tears in her eyes, gently brushing the deer's fur. The caretaker broke the news to the deer that it had been sold to the Lunar God clan. The poor creature was in shock. 2 figures, draped in the capes of the Lunar God clan, made their way toward the Moon Lab. Onlookers gazed at them in confusion, wondering why they had come. These two were sisters, the fiery-haired girl expressing her disapproval and sneering at the academy where the Lunar King resided. Her elder, blue-haired sister cautioned her against causing trouble or conflict with either the Lunar King or the Double Moon clan. Their sole objective was to retrieve the white flower deer. After a few moments, a woman opened the door to the Moon Lab with a warm smile, greeting the two visitors. Quinn, the curator of the Moon Lab, led the sisters inside, although their lack of respect for her was palpable. Despite feeling offended by their demeanor, she knew that the Lunar God clan was no longer the overlord of the realm. Even so, she maintained her professionalism and asked to show them the white flower deer. The older sister wanted to waste no time and offered to pay 10 times the original price for the deer, but Quinn had a sudden idea. The white flower deer was notoriously picky about its mate and was almost extinct, making its value equivalent to a high-ranked creature. Quinn knew that the Lunar God clan was eager to purchase the deer, so she decided to make the most out of the situation. She lifted her glasses and claimed that the white flower deer was actually the offspring of an emperor-ranked creature owned by the first-generation founder of the academy. As such, the deer had always been treated luxuriously, akin to how one would treat a supreme beast. Even with a 10-fold increase in the price, it wouldn't compensate for the resources spent on its upbringing over the years. The younger sister burst into a fit of laughter, unable to contain her amusement. It was clear that she didn't believe a single word that came out of Quinn's mouth. But the older sister wasn't amused. In fact, she was dead serious. "Shut your mouth," she demanded, glaring at her giggling sibling. Then, turning her gaze to Quinn, she locked eyes with her and asked, "Do you think 20 times the price will be enough?" The younger sister whispered to her sister that it was way above their budget, but the older sister was undeterred. Turned out the older sister owns a rare high-ranked beast with the uncanny ability to sense fortune and predict danger. And ever since they arrived at the Moon Lab, her beast had been acting manic, sensing something ominous on the horizon. That's why they needed to leave the place as soon as possible. Suddenly, the older sister sensed an otherworldly aura emanating from behind her. Slowly turning around, she came face to face with a sight that sent shivers down her spine. There, hovering in mid-air, was a being unlike any she had ever seen before. The bystanders looked on in shock as the Lunar King, Su, made his way toward the two unwelcome guests. They stepped away and made a path for the almighty man, wary of getting too close to his intimidating presence. Su moved slowly, deliberately, like a predator stalking his prey. The older sister couldn't help but shiver in fear. She had no idea what brought the Lunar King to a place like the Moon Lab, but she knew it couldn't be good. Glancing over at her younger sister, she was horrified to see that the younger girl had lost consciousness and was unresponsive. Frantically trying to wake her sister up with their telepathic ability, the older sister warned her not to look at Su directly. The younger sister eventually woke up, but it seemed that the effort had drained her completely. The otherworldly aura emanating from Su was so intense that the sisters couldn't even look at him directly. It was like they were in the presence of a godlike figure, and any misstep could lead to their destruction. But from Su's point of view, he couldn't help but find the situation a bit ridiculous. The two sisters were like tiny kittens, huddling together for safety. And why weren't they wearing any pants? As time went on, the tension between the sisters and Su only grew. They had no idea what he wanted from them, and he seemed to be in no hurry to explain himself. Su, for his part, was growing impatient. He couldn't understand why no one had come to explain the situation to him yet. In the end, it was a standoff. The two sisters, trembling with fear. With a burst of excitement and enthusiasm, Quinn charged toward Su and introduced herself with great fervor. She eagerly shared the news of her recent induction into the prestigious Double Moon clan, proudly proclaiming her affiliation for all to hear. But that wasn't all. With a glint in her eye, she revealed the true purpose of their visit, to acquire the elusive mid-ranked white flower deer. It was obvious that no one but Su knew the real identity of the deer. This wasn't just any ordinary deer, no, this was a heavenly lunar. As Su processed the gravity of the situation, he knew he had to act quickly. Without a moment's hesitation, he strode past the two sisters and headed straight for the moon lab. But before he disappeared inside, he turned to face the sisters with a steely gaze and demanded that they vacate the premises immediately. "The moon is about to set," he growled, his tone brooking no argument. Initially, the crowd was thrown into a state of confusion. What could this cryptic warning possibly mean? But then, as if a switch had been flipped, a collective understanding dawned on them. If the Lunar King has said this, there must be a deeper meaning. The weight of the Lunar King's words bore down on the sisters like a ton of bricks. The younger sibling attempted to protest, stuttering and stumbling over her words, but as Su fixed his piercing gaze upon her once more, she promptly wet herself and crumpled to the ground in a puddle of shame. Talk about a lunatic situation. But seriously, this chapter is very weird. Anyway, back to the story. As the sisters hastily made their exit, red-faced and mortified, the onlookers could scarcely believe what they had just witnessed. With a deep sigh of relief, Su made his way into the moon lab, congratulating himself on the perfect acting. He couldn't quite explain why he'd blurted out that the moon was about to set. It was just one of those lunar sigh moments, he supposed. But hey, if it got the Lunar God clan off their backs, he wasn't about to complain. As he pushed deeper into the lab, he could hear a cacophony of noise emanating from the usually serene luxury room where the white flower deer resided. It sounded like a pack of wild animals had descended upon the place, and in a sense, they had. Workers bustled about, frantically packing up the precious cargo in preparation for the arrival of the Lunar God clan. Amidst the chaos, Su spotted the white flower deer nibbling on a worker's coat, and it was clear from the expression on her face that she was none too pleased about the commotion. Su couldn't help but chuckle to himself as he imagined the deer uttering the words, "Don't take my stuff," in her own special way. The caretaker felt odd about the deer's unusual behavior, and she decided to take matters into her own hands. She strode forward purposefully, ready to help pack up the animal's belongings herself. The white flower deer frantically tried to stop the caretaker from lifting the sheets, but it was too late. With a deft hand, the caretaker revealed a treasure trove of items hiding underneath: snacks, a trashy romance novel titled "Dominating CEO Loves Me," a doll, a smartphone, and a handheld mirror. The caretaker looked confused as she examined the items, but her attention was drawn to the smartphone. As she picked it up, the deer began to sweat nervously. She couldn't let anyone discover her search history. With a determined look in her eyes, she charged at the caretaker, ramming her onto the bed, hoping to knock the phone out of her hand. But in her haste, the deer only succeeded in causing the phone to fly through the air like a lunar projectile. For a moment, it seemed as though the phone was headed straight for disaster. But then, out of nowhere, a hand shot out to catch it, and the owner of that hand was none other than Su, the Lunar King himself. As the deer gazed up at Su in disbelief, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. It was as if fate had intervened to bring these two together. The white flower deer cursed her luck. Out of all the people to catch her with her guilty pleasure novel, it had to be Su, the Lunar King himself. She cringed and tried to hide behind the bed, hoping that her embarrassment would go unnoticed. But Su had already seen everything. As he swiped through the deer's phone screen, a sly smirk appeared on his face. He knew he had just uncovered a juicy secret. After a moment of relishing in the deer's mortification, Su tossed the phone aside and declared that the deal with the Lunar God clan was off. Everyone was to go home, and he would return later that night to discuss the future of the Moon Lab. Without giving any further explanation, Su turned on his heel and strode out of the room. While everyone was left to wonder what kind of negotiations were about to take place, the workers were left dumbfounded and perplexed by Su's true intentions for buying the Moon Lab. It turns out that he wanted to use the lab as a front to make contact with various lunar creatures in order to unlock more items in the gacha system. Little did he know that he was about to witness the mortified side of a powerful supreme deer. Su quickly realized that he needed to retreat for his own safety. With a loud slam of the door, he started sprinting away from the scene. Meanwhile, the caretaker was left pondering over the strange expression on Su's face when he saw the smartphone. She couldn't help but wonder what was on it to elicit such a reaction from the almighty Lunar King. Just as she was about to reach for the phone, the deer sprung into action. She bit down on the phone and sprinted her way out of the room, knowing full well that the Lunar King had seen everything. The scene was so bizarre that even the deer couldn't believe what had just happened. But she is certain that the Lunar King has noticed her real identity and unrevealed her secret. There is no way she is allowing the man to leave the moon lab. Stop! As Sue turned around, a voice like a chorus of angels stopped him in his tracks. It was captivating and euphonic, like a melody from a distant galaxy. Sue found out it was a female, and no wonder she enjoyed reading those types of novels. He was face to face with a deer. As Sue chuckled at the deer's flustered reaction, he couldn't help but feel a sense of amusement at the situation. The deer was caught red-handed, and now she was at his mercy. But before he could say anything else, the deer regained her composure and stood up tall. "You think you can just make fun of me like that?" she retorted, her voice laced with anger. "I won't let you get away with this." But the deer wasn't playing games. She warned him not to tell a soul, or else she'd make sure he never left the moon lab. The tension was so thick, you could cut it with a butter knife. After an uncomfortable silence, Sue broke the ice with a witty remark, "Woman, you have successfully attracted my interest." One of the lines from the novel she was previously reading. The deer was caught off guard and felt a wave of embarrassment and shame wash over her. She was blushing so hard that she looked like a ripe tomato. Sue wasn't satisfied with just one repetition and decided to say the line again, causing the deer to stumble over her words and struggle to form a coherent sentence. Suddenly, Sue remembered a unique ability only possessed by supreme-ranked creatures. He could summon them to his side by calling their true name within a certain radius. With a steady hand and a mischievous glint in his eye, Sue asked the deer if she would immediately come to his side if he were to call out her name. The deer, without hesitation, replied in the affirmative, but soon realized she may have just made a deal with the devil. Leaning forward with a gentle smile, Sue sealed the deal, and officially had the heavenly lunar as his contract creature, warning the deer that if she failed to respond to his call, he would reveal her secret to everyone. The deer was stunned by the good looks and charm of the Lunar King as she stuttered a response. Sue nodded and exited the moon lab, but the deer couldn't resist calling after him to be careful of the full moon. As she reflected on their conversation, she realized it was like a scene straight out of a romance novel. Had she just met her own dominating CEO? Sue stepped back from the moon lab and took a deep breath, trying to calm down his racing heart. He couldn't believe that he had just threatened a supreme-ranked creature, all because of his desire to have some fun. As he wiped the sweat from his forehead, he wondered if he had gone too far. But then, he remembered the deer's cute side and the thrill of the moment. Still, Sue couldn't shake off the feeling that the deer was trying to warn him about something, especially with the full moon happening in 3 days. The tension in the room was palpable as the pillars of the Lunar God clan discussed the implications of the Lunar King's comment. These 10 individuals stood at the top positions of the Lunar God clan and were renowned for their beauty and expertise in beast taming. As they deliberated, the 4th pillar suggested that the Lunar King was simply reminding them of the upcoming full moon, but the other pillars quickly shot her down with a chorus of insults. One pillar, however, had a different theory. She reasoned that the Lunar King would never waste his time with weak and low-ranked creatures, so there must be a reason why he was so interested in the moon lab. The most likely explanation was that there was a powerful supreme or even emperor-level creature inside. The legend says that there's a god sealed inside of his body, and it is about time for it to be fully awakened. The atmosphere in the room grew even tenser as the pillars contemplated this possibility. Could their worst nightmare be coming true? Would they be able to fight back against a fully awakened god? The fate of their clan hung in the balance. As the 4th pillar nervously waited for a response, suddenly the sound of someone connecting to the Discord server echoed through the room. The tension in the air was palpable as the 4th pillar asked if the Black Moon clan was ready to take on the Lunar King and his Double Moon clan, despite the fact that the Lunar King had already contracted with an emperor-ranked creature. The voice on the other end of the line trembled as they heard the bombshell drop. But just as the 4th pillar was about to lose all hope, another mysterious figure replaced the man on the line, speaking in a hushed and mysterious tone. "Remain calm," the voice said. "There is another person in this world who is just as strong as the Lunar King." For the past few days, Sue had been on a mission. He had purchased the Moon Lab and commanded his Double Moon clan to gather every type of lunar creature they could find and bring them to the academy. This move shook the entire northern continent, and rumors began to spread like wildfire. Some said that the Lunar King was getting stronger by consuming weak and low-ranked animals to restore his energy, while others speculated that the god inside him was awakening. Despite the chaos surrounding him, Su remained unfazed. He spent most of his days summoning from the gacha system, and this time, he managed to unlock 5 new beasts. Most of them were low to mid-ranked, but one was a high-ranked creature that caught his eye. As Su made a daring swipe, he retrieved 4 creatures and gazed upon their rank. Disappointed, he decided to return them all except for one, the high-ranked creature, Moon Reflection. The name sounded unfamiliar to him, so he whipped out his phone to do a quick search, but to his surprise, there were no results. Su's shock was palpable. A creature that can't be found on Wikipedia. What kind of sorcery was this? Determined to uncover the truth, Su turned his attention to the lunar book, which detailed a creature that had once roamed the earth 13,000 years ago but went extinct. The creature's ability, aptly named Sunk, allowed it to absorb all nearby shocks and waves. However, if the limit was exceeded, it would explode, only to revive itself after some time. Su couldn't believe what he was reading. This creature had existed longer than the Lunar God clan, and it was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. The revelation shook Su to his core. He had always been afraid of signing a contract with a high-ranked beast, fearful that someone might recognize it and overthrow his persona, but if it was a high-ranked creature that nobody knew about, and its ability was tremendously useful, he could safely contract the creature without anyone finding out its true identity. Without a second thought, Su signed the Moon Reflection as his contract creature. Under the light of the full moon, a sassy figure stood on top of a building, striking a pose as he gazed at the lunar beauty. He thought he was John Wick or something, but in reality, he was just a spy assigned by the Black Moon clan to monitor the Lunar King's every move. Suddenly, a massive creature appeared behind him, causing the sassy spy to turn around and face the beast. Meanwhile, in Su's dormitory, the flicker butterfly was acting up, fluttering around like a drunk butterfly on a sugar high. Su knew it was due to the full moon, so he quickly got dressed and stepped outside. What he saw was pure chaos. Students and teachers were chasing after their beasts, and the ground was quaking. Su looked out the window and saw a man being chased by a giant beast. The sassy spy couldn't believe his eyes. The mere size of a low-ranked moon bunny was kicking his ass. As the massive moon bunny let out a deafening roar, the sassy man dodged left and right. Maybe the bunny sensed his spy instincts, or perhaps it just had a hankering for some midnight snacks. Either way, chaos ensued as the bunny rampaged through the academy. The ruckus outside disturbed the slumber of a nearby deer in the Moon Lab, who was not pleased. She ordered the Moon Lab creatures, who were already on edge and enraged, to settle down and behave. Miraculously, they all lined up in perfect formation and obediently returned to their rooms. The deer had been losing sleep recently. The deer couldn't help but wonder what Su meant when he said to be on his side. Could it be if Su really needed her help? She tossed and turned, hiding her face in her pillow, too embarrassed to dwell on it any longer. She tried to drift off to sleep. Meanwhile, the giant moon bunny continued to wreak havoc, but the sassy man was a slippery one. He dodged every attack with ease, leaving the bunny in a frustrated frenzy. The sassy man's beast appeared before him. It is a magnificent creature that was a cross between 2 dolphins. He hopped onto its back and raced towards the giant moon bunny, determined to put an end to its rampage. But the bunny was not easily persuaded and continued to strike at the sassy man with all its might. Suddenly, the bunny's ears perked up and it lifted a pile of crumbled rocks with ease, launching them at the sassy man. The impact caused damage to 2 nearby dolphin-like creatures, but they were quick to heal thanks to their magical abilities. Undeterred by the bunny's actions, the sassy man sneered at the beast, knowing it was just an enraged creature with no intelligence. He then hopped off his 2 dolphins and ordered them to merge, resulting in a hideous creature that began to absorb the moonlight. Slowly approaching the giant bunny, the sassy man ordered his beast to attack. With a mighty lunge, the massive creature opened its massive jaw and chomped down on the bunny with all its might. Meanwhile, the teachers are busy evacuating the academy. As the chaos unfolded around them, the lone figure felt the surge of energy within him intensify, urging him towards the scene of destruction. As the dust settled, the sassy man's creature writhed in pain, screaming in agony as the mighty moon bunny remained unscathed. Sandra and Bai were awestruck by the battle unfolding before their eyes. Bai, ever the curious one, couldn't resist the urge to investigate what had caused this commotion, but her friend Sandra immediately condemned her behavior with a resounding smack to the head. Bai couldn't help but feel drawn to the giant bunny, something about it felt strangely familiar. Sandra suggested that it could be a highly ranked hammer bunny, but the sheer size of the creature was definitely unusual. The bunny had captured the sassy man's beast with its ears and held it tightly before slamming it onto the ground, shattering the nearby road into tiny pieces. As the sassy man's beast continued to take an absolute beating, he ordered it to use its ability. A massive wave of suction formed within the beast's mouth, creating a giant vacuum that shattered the ground beneath the giant bunny. Just as the sassy man thought he had the upper hand, the giant bunny surprised everyone by copying the beast's move and opening its mouth wide. It started sucking in all the nearby air, its tummy growing rounder and rounder as if it was about to burst. Sandra sensed that something terrible was about to happen and quickly covered Bai's body while summoning her own beast to protect them both. A massive wave of energy began forming within the bunny, and with an almighty scream, it unleashed a powerful attack toward the sassy man and his beast. The shockwave was so intense that it lifted nearby buildings and the ground of the earth. The impact was like a nuclear explosion, leaving nothing but ruins in the bunny's wake. As the dust and rubble settled once more, Bai couldn't help but let out a chuckle at the sight before her. Well, that escalated quickly, she quipped to Sandra, who just rolled her eyes in response. Despite the chaos and destruction, Bai couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and wonder at the incredible power displayed by the mighty moon bunny. Moments later, the bunny was interrupted by the sound of people coughing behind it. With no buildings to hide behind, the two girls were fully exposed to the giant bunny's fearsome presence. Despite its enormous size and incredible strength, Bai's beast valiantly tried to protect its owner. The bunny started walking towards the two girls, lifting its ears as if to listen for something. The two girls huddled together, bracing themselves for the worst, but to their surprise, the bunny didn't attack them. Instead, it began to show affection and excitement towards Bai. The bunny didn't seem to be a mindless monster after all. It quickly sprang into action, removing the stones and debris and digging out the sassy man who had been buried in the dirt. The sassy man continued to taunt and threaten the bunny, but the creature simply tossed him aside as if he were a mere plaything. The bunny then raised its massive paws, and the two girls realized with growing horror that they had no idea what to do. Unbeknownst to them, the sassy man was actually a spy, and they recognized him as a teacher from their academy. They couldn't simply stand by and let the bunny kill him, even though they knew that their beasts were no match for the bunny's overwhelming power. Just as Bai was about to confront the bunny, a man stepped in to stop her. It was none other than the Lunar King himself. The Lunar King stood tall and imposing, his regal presence commanding respect from all those around him. The time has come for the convergence of the moon, proclaimed Su, striding confidently towards the massive bunny with an air of aristocracy. His every movement was dapper and suave, exuding an aura of refined elegance. As Su approached, the giant bunny turned its head to face the almighty Lunar King, its attention now fully fixed on him. Let's rewind the clock by 10 minutes and delve into how Su found himself in this sticky situation. It was a night like no other, the full moon was casting an eerie glow on the surroundings and Su was feeling particularly daring. As soon as Su laid his eyes on the bunny, his heart sank. The furry creature was colossal in size and had an aura of sheer power surrounding it. To make matters worse, Su witnessed the bunny take down a 4-star mentor with ease. Su's flickering butterfly and moon reflection suddenly seemed like child's play against the giant bunny's might. In a moment of desperation, Su contemplated calling his trusty deer for backup. But just as he was about to make the call, he noticed something peculiar. The giant bunny had positioned itself between two helpless girls and didn't seem to have any intention of causing them harm. As Su scratched his head in confusion, he realized that there was only one logical explanation for the bunny's behavior. The sassy man gasped for air, his eyes bulging out of their sockets as he desperately clung to life. He had been eager to witness the true power of the Lunar King, but instead, he found himself being lifted by Bai's tiger and flung hundreds of meters away. All that remained was a pile of rubble, with Su and the giant bunny facing off against each other. Su could sense that the bunny wasn't really enraged, but rather acting on pure instinct. With a smile on his face, he outstretched his hand and said, "You must have been trying to find me, huh?" In the distance, Bai and Sandra watched on in a position where even a bakery owner would blush, wondering what in the world the Lunar King was up to. Suddenly, the giant bunny slammed its ears onto Su, sending the two girls into a state of shock. As the attack drew closer and closer to Su, time seemed to slow down to a crawl. The only thing that could be heard was the sound of a single droplet of water hitting a lake. But just as it seemed like Su's fate was sealed, something miraculous happened. Su was suddenly surrounded by his newly contracted beast, Moon Reflection, who hugged him from behind and absorbed the entire strike. The bunny's attack was completely neutralized, leaving Su and his beast unscathed. The sassy man watched in horror as the creature revealed its true form, a being of ancient, mysterious power. According to the intel circulating in the Black Moon clan, it was no doubt the emperor-ranked creature, feared by all who knew of it. Meanwhile, Su slowly opened his eyes, his body aching from the force of the attack. But he knew he had made the right call. The giant bunny was indeed the low-ranked moonlight bunny he had seen before, but with a lunar deficiency that had forced it to rank up to survive. Su gently rubbed the bunny's furry ear, feeling a strange kinship with the creature. He knew that creatures with lunar deficiency could only absorb energy from the moonlight during the full moon, and the bunny's desire for power had forced it to evolve beyond its limits. As he looked into the bunny's eyes, he saw a glimmer of recognition, as if the creature knew him somehow. Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, three mysterious figures landed behind the group. The sassy man's heart skipped a beat as he realized the gravity of the situation. "It's too late," he whispered with a sense of dread. "The Lunar King is alarmed, and everyone here is going to die." Even the three women accompanying them couldn't hide their shock at the news. The Lunar King was one of the most feared and powerful beings in the land, and no one dared to cross him. But Su, ever the quick thinker, saw the reinforcements and knew he couldn't waste any more time. He approached the giant bunny with a sense of gentleness, patting onto the bunny's ears, and asked if the bunny is here to look for him. Slowly, the giant bunny bowed down low to show its respect. It was a sight to behold, with the bunny's face touching the ground due to its sheer size. Su made a pact to meet it in the very spot where they had first encountered each other. And with a joyful cry, the giant bunny bounced off into the distance, leaving everyone else in shock. The sassy man's jaw dropped as he watched the Lunar King let the giant bunny go unscathed, despite the fact that it had attacked him. Su sneered at the man, his eyes filled with mischief. "Do you even call that an attack?" he quipped, making the sassy man fall silent. Suddenly, the shape of the crescent moon in the Lunar King's pupil began to shift and transform, until it was replaced by a dazzling, unblemished full moon. It was as if the very heavens themselves were bearing witness to the shifting of fate and the rise of a new order. The sassy man felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized that something momentous is about to happen. Su's eyes seemed to possess an almost otherworldly power, drawing the sassy man into their depths until he was frozen in place, unresponsive to the three women around him. Memories began to flood his mind, swirling around him like a raging storm. He saw the giant bunny, and how it had utterly obliterated his contracted creature with ease. He saw the mysterious beast summoned by Su, and the last piercing glance he had received from the Lunar King. It was all too much to bear. The sassy man's lips moved soundlessly, whispering a single word that only he could hear. Suddenly, he began to shake uncontrollably, as if his very being was about to shatter into a million pieces. He clutched his head with both hands, crying out in anguish. "Emperor! It was the Emperor, I've seen it," he yelled, his voice echoing across the desolate landscape. His mind whirled with a sense of impending doom as he tried to make sense of what he had witnessed. The sassy man's thoughts were in disarray, his emotions a tumultuous maelstrom of fear and confusion. At last, he let out a final scream of the Lunar King's name before plummeting into the abyss. Sassy groaned as he slowly regained consciousness, his head throbbing with pain. Blinking groggily, he took in his surroundings. It was a sterile, unfamiliar room that looked suspiciously like the medical room of the academy. Suddenly, a voice rang out inside his head, causing him to jump in surprise. It was a mysterious voice, one that seemed to come from the depths of his own mind. It informed him that the recumbent lunar blade, the enigmatic creature, had reappeared in the northern continent. The vice president of the third branch had already set out to investigate, but Sassy was ordered to continue his role as a spy, monitoring the Lunar King's every move and reporting back to the Black Moon clan regularly. As Su's vision cleared, he saw the two giant ears hanging down from the creature's head, and he realized with a start that it was his newly contracted beast, the Moon Bunny. The bunny had returned to its normal form, its fur soft and fluffy under Su's fingers as he tentatively reached out to pet it. The bunny waved its two tiny paws in the air as if greeting its master with a cheerful, "Good morning." As fate would have it, Su found himself once again in the presence of the enigmatic Moon Bunny. With a sense of excitement and anticipation, he approached the creature, marveling at how it had transformed back into its regular form. The bunny was innocently bouncing and chasing after a butterfly as if it had no care in the world. Remembering the promise he had made, Su took a deep breath and signed the contract with the lunar being. He couldn't help but wonder about the limits of the bunny's power. Could it surpass even the highest-ranked barriers and become a supreme-ranked beast? The possibilities were endless. But just as Su was lost in thought, he was rudely interrupted by the bunny chomping on his shoes. Looking up at him with its beady eyes and wiggling its tiny tail, Su couldn't help but facepalm at the bunny's antics. Quickly shake off the thought and said, "Not a chance." As Su stepped out of his room, he was greeted by a hallway filled with a flurry of activity. People were running in one direction, their faces etched with panic and excitement. Intrigued, Su made his way through the throngs of people, eager to learn what had everyone so worked up. As luck would have it, Su overheard two girls discussing the appearance of a supreme-ranked creature not far from the academy. His interest piqued. He pulled out his phone and began to search for any news related to the incident. To his surprise, the first headline he came across was about the elusive recumbent lunar blade, the only known weapon-type supreme-ranked beast which also had never before acknowledged a beast tamer as its master. With hundreds of thousands of spectators flocking to the northern continent, waiting to see the legendary supreme creature, some people started connecting the dots. The appearance of the legendary recumbent lunar blade in the northern continent had sparked a frenzy among the people. Whispers and rumors spread like wildfire, speculating on the reasons behind the sudden appearance of the supreme weapon. Many believed that it was no coincidence that the blade had surfaced in the same area where the enigmatic Lunar King resided. After reading the report, Su made the decision to walk in the opposite direction. The two scouts who had been watching him were baffled by his choice. They couldn't fathom why the Lunar King wasn't heading straight for the supreme weapon. Despite his thirst for the supreme-ranked weapon, Su was no fool. He knew better than to stand in front of hundreds of thousands of people and try to contract and subdue the recumbent lunar blade. Could you imagine how embarrassing it would be if he failed? Instead, he decided to spend his time with the pretty little deer, whose company he found much more enjoyable. In the moon lab, the deer rested her chin on her hooves, lost in thought. She couldn't help but wonder about Su, and what he was up to. Just then, the door creaked open, drawing her attention. Su had arrived, and the little deer's heart leaped with joy. Although she had a bit of a tsundere personality, the deer was very happy to see Su. She tried to act calm and composed, but her excitement was palpable. She asked Su why he hadn't headed towards the recumbent lunar blade, hoping for some kind of explanation. Su sat down on the deer's bed and looked at her with a gentle smile. "A blade isn't pretty like you," he said softly. The little deer blushed at the compliment, her heart racing. As Su reached for his pants, the little deer's eyes widened with curiosity. What could he be pulling out? "Don't tell me, it's way too early."
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
To her surprise, Sue produced a round object, a luxurious food item reserved only for the supreme-ranked creatures, as someone who had always been treated as a mid-ranked. The deer had never seen anything like it before. She examined the candy carefully, admiring its intricate design and exquisite flavor. Finally, she placed it gently inside her candy box, alongside her other cherished treats. She loved to store snacks and candy, enjoying them while watching movies or reading novels. Before Sue left, he asked for the deer's phone number and added her to a chatting app. As he glanced at the avatar she was using, he wondered if it was a representation of her ancestor. He couldn't help but ponder if the deer would become something similar later in life. As he took one last look at the little deer. "You sick pervert, what you wanna do to the little deer?" As Sue departed, the deer's heart raced with the realization that Sue had chosen to spend time with her instead of chasing after the fabled supreme-ranked recumbent lunar blade. Her cheeks flushed with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Was Sue truly interested in her, or was this all part of some elaborate scheme? Suddenly, a brilliant idea sparked in the deer's mind. She recalled a trick from one of her favorite novels, Playing Hard to Get. Perhaps Sue was trying to trick her into joining the Double Moon clan. The clever deer stood tall, adopting a pose reminiscent of the great Detective Conan, confident that she had unraveled Sue's plot. But as the moment passed, the deer lay back on her bed, wondering if Sue would be returning the next day. As the days slipped away, the Lunar King's apathy towards the recumbent lunar blade remained unchanged. The Double Moon clan, too, remained eerily silent, their motives shrouded in mystery. Deep in a secluded valley, a long line of people snaked its way towards a desk, guarded by a woman whose voluptuous assets and sharp tongue commanded attention. Claire, vice president of the Lunar Beast Tamer Academy, stood tall and unyielding, her voice echoing through the valley as she demanded that each person fill out a safety sheet before proceeding any further. Among the throng, the sassy man limped his way towards the desk, his body riddled with bandages from previous misadventures. He had come to take over Claire's post, and couldn't resist ogling the ample bite of the female students. But his lecherous thoughts were quickly interrupted by the sudden appearance of a woman draped in a flowing cape. As the sassy man's mind continued to wander, he suddenly caught sight of a tattoo on the mysterious woman's hand, sending a chill down his spine. His eyes darted back to her face. It was her. Nestled deep in the valley, a striking blue-skinned woman gazed in awe at the shimmering aura emanating from the recumbent lunar blade, visible miles away. She was an officer hailing from a powerful water-type guild in the central continent, who had traveled far to witness this rare and momentous event. Her arrival had not gone unnoticed, and the guild and clan leaders from the northern continent wore expressions of thinly veiled hostility. The academy teacher warned the woman that non-lunar type beasts would be repelled by the protective energy surrounding the blade and that it was tantamount to suicide to approach without the aid of lunar beasts. But the woman nodded resolutely, insisting on staying behind to bear witness to the unfolding events. Moments later, Claire arrived with a group of eager students, poised to enter the territory of the recumbent lunar blade. She sternly explained the rules to the assembled group, warning that the blade could not be destroyed when it was sleeping and that when it was awake, it would unleash a devastating shockwave that would slice through anything in its path. As the deer continued to explain the rules to Sue, he lounged lazily on his bed, his mind wandering off to thoughts of comfort and leisure. The notion of facing off against a legendary supreme beast seemed as far-fetched to him as a mermaid riding a unicorn. Could you imagine the almighty Lunar King died miserably under a supreme-ranked blade? But as he continued to think, a sudden jolt shot through Sue's body, as if an electric current had passed through him. His eyes widened as he realized that there was something he needed to do. As the students eagerly lined up to enter the forbidden territory, the caped woman watched with hawk-like intensity, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of the Lunar King. Her mind consumed with thoughts of capturing the recumbent lunar blade and wiping out all witnesses. Suddenly, her phone began to buzz, jolting her out of her reverie. With trembling hands, she checked the GPS tracker and saw that the Lunar King was on the move, making his way toward the treacherous valley where the blade was said to be hidden. Her heart racing with questions, but then, Claire's voice rang out, piercing through the caped woman's thoughts. "Pay attention," she barked, her tone sharp and commanding. "Do you want to die out here? The caped woman gritted her teeth, swallowing back a retort as she forced herself to bow in apology. She couldn't risk blowing her cover, not now when she was so close to achieving her goal. But deep down, she seethed with anger and resentment, her mind already scheming up ways to punish Claire for her insolence. With a steely glint in her eye, when everything settles, she will be getting her hands dirty and playing a little SM with Claire and punishing her. As the students gathered around Claire, their eyes fixed on the shimmering teleportation stones in their hands, the tension in the air was palpable. They knew that this was no ordinary mission, one misstep, one wrong move, and they could all end up dead, trapped inside the Blade's awakened realm for all eternity. Breaking the stone will instantly teleport them back to safety, but as Claire warned them to be careful, the blue-skinned woman sneered in contempt, her lips curling into a mocking grin. In her eyes, these mere 1- and 2-star beast tamers were nothing more than foolish mortals, delusional in their quest to capture the legendary lunar blade. Even the mighty 8-star beast tamer, Sangyu Emperor, had failed in his attempt to subdue the blade. What hope did these amateurs have? As she scanned the group, her eyes fell upon a caped woman, her cloak billowing in the wind. I'm unsure if she is looking at her cloak or her cake, but then the woman turned to meet her gaze, and the blue-skinned woman felt a chill run down her spine. It was as if 1,000 serpents were biting at her, the intensity of the woman's stare leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. As the students stepped inside the teleportation circle and disappeared from view, the blue-skinned woman approached Claire, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Why to bother with a bunch of weaklings, she taunted. Why not just call in the Lunar King and be done with it? As the blue-skinned woman sneered at Claire, the tension in the air reached a boiling point. But before the situation could escalate any further, a sudden presence filled the room, causing everyone to turn and gasp in shock. It was Su, the legendary Lunar King himself. Even the blue-skinned woman, who had been so dismissive of the student's abilities just moments before, was taken aback by his appearance. But Claire, ever the professional fangirl, greeted Su with the utmost respect, bowing deeply before him. Onlookers watched in awe as they were concerned that the lunar blade might repel the Lunar King's emperor-ranked beast, but Claire, the ultimate fangirl, couldn't contain her excitement. If the mighty Lunar King is here, she declared, her eyes shining with admiration, it means that he must have full confidence in his ability to subdue the infamous blade without unleashing his emperor-ranked beast. Well, that's not exactly why Su is here. Does everyone remember Su's lunar book? That's right, Su is required to be in close contact with the beast to unlock it in his book. As Su's foot touches the outer layer of the circle, the lunar book springs to life, unlocking a new beast, the Silence Balance. This majestic creature is the supreme ranked beast, renowned for its unparalleled purity. It may not be a combatant, but it has crowd control abilities that'll make your jaw drop. The Silence Balance boasts 2 distinct skills. The first one is called Fairness, which means that only supreme-ranked beasts are allowed to launch attacks in its territory. And if that's not enough, its second ability is called Silence, which lets the user blend in with their surroundings, becoming invisible even to the most powerful emperor-ranked beasts. Su took a step back, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. He knew this was no ordinary beast, and a quick search on his phone confirmed his suspicions. The Silence Balance belonged to none other than the Black Moon Clan, a notorious group known for their ruthless tactics and merciless ways. Turning to Claire, Su demanded an explanation. Why did they allow these mere insects from the Black Moon Clan to infiltrate their territory? The shock and confusion on everyone's faces were palpable as Su made his announcement. From this moment forward, the Double Moon Clan would take control of this place, and no one else would be allowed in. The news hit the big shots of the northern continent like a bolt of lightning, leaving them reeling from the sudden change of events. The blue-skinned woman, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. She knew that the cloaked woman who had entered the circle here must have been from the Black Moon Clan. Su realized that the only reason the Silent Balance had been placed here was to prevent him from summoning his emperor-ranked beast. The Black Moon Clan had clearly thought that Su was in possession of one. The Lunar King had entered the circle, and as always, the sassy man, a notorious drama queen, began to stir up trouble. Using the remnants of the Black Moon Clan as an excuse, he tried to persuade everyone to let him enter the circle to protect Su. The big shots of the northern continent began to discuss, unsure of what to do. The sassy man had the clear intention of trying to stir up chaos and perhaps even get Sue killed. The sassy man didn't want the big shots to go in with him, and so, with bandages covering his wounds, he limped his way toward the entrance of the circle. Claire sensed that something was off with the sassy man's behavior, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Just as the sassy man was about to enter, a powerful surge of energy from the sky struck him, knocking him several meters away. As the dust settled, a woman wearing bells around her waist appeared, sneering at the sassy man. The woman who had appeared before them belonged to the Double Moon clan, one of the most powerful and prestigious clans in the northern continent. She was one of the 12 elite officers, and her reputation preceded her wherever she went. "You shall not pass," Gandalf declared. The woman declared, her voice ringing out across the clearing. "This circle is under the protection of the Double Moon clan, and we will not allow anyone to disrupt the peace." As the cloaked woman ventured deeper into the circle, she felt a growing sense of unease. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of her footsteps crunching on the gravelly ground. Suddenly, she sensed a powerful energy discharged behind her. She sprinted toward the location. There, in the center of the circle, was the recumbent lunar blade. She approached the blade cautiously, her heart racing with excitement. With a confident smile on her face, she stepped forward, her body swaying like a willow in the wind. Her eyes gleamed with determination, and her long, flowing hair seemed to dance around her like flames. As she outstretched her hands, she took a deep breath and spoke with a voice that commanded attention. "I know what you want," she said, her words ringing out like a clarion call. "You have rejected the Tsang-Yu Emperor and the Saintess from the Moon God clan, for they were born with an emperor-ranked beast by their side. But you, my proud beast, cannot accept being in a lower status than any other." She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she unleashed her power. It was emblazoned with the symbol of a 6-star beast tamer. "I am a 6-star beast tamer," she declared, her voice ringing out with pride. "Although I may not be as strong as those you have rejected, I will be a rightful owner. And I will prove it to you." With that, she put her hand toward the lunar blade, a weapon of immense power that had claimed the lives of countless beasts. With a blinding flash of light, the very fabric of space and time seemed to come to a halt. The air crackled with an electric energy as the woman's hand closing in onto the weapon. As the 6-star beast tamer reached for the long, thick, and enigmatic lunar blade, a sudden burst of blinding light emanated from the weapon, stopping her hand dead in its tracks. The force of the impact knocked her hand away, and she stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock.
"Move, bitch! Get out the way! Get out the way, bitch! Get out the way!"
The invisible barrier that had blocked her way was a clear indication that she had failed to subdue the supreme weapon. She scratched her head in disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just happened. She had been told by the leader that she was the perfect person to capture the lunar blade. So what had gone wrong? As she struggled to come to a conclusion, a group of students appeared behind her, their eyes filled with disdain and anger. They were from the Soul Lunar sect, and they had come to exact revenge on the woman who had attacked 20 of their sect members. Just minutes earlier, the boy found more than 20 of his sect members heavily beaten up on the side of the road. Before the man lost consciousness, he warned the boy it was a woman, wearing a black cloak, the long black hair, and a pair of serpent-like eyes. With a cold, sneering grin, the woman looked at the group with her serpentine eyes. She was furious for being rejected by the lunar blade, and now she had a bunch of weaklings challenging her. "Who do you think you are?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Come on then, show me what you're made of." As the woman clenched her fist, a surge of power coursed through her body. With a sudden burst of light, 3 orbs appeared behind her, coming out of her. But? I don't know, it kinda looks like that, anyway, each one pulsing with otherworldly energy. The orbs hovered in the air, emanating an eerie glow that sent shivers down the spines of the Soul Lunar sect members. The woman smirked at their reactions, reveling in the fear and awe she had instilled in them. These were no ordinary beasts, they were the evil moon, the floating shadow, and the thunderous lunar, all high-ranked beasts. The sect members took a step back, their eyes widening in disbelief. How could a student summon 3 high-ranked beasts at once? It was unheard of, and yet, there she stood, commanding them with ease. You asked for it, she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. And now you shall feel the wrath of my beasts. With a flick of her wrist, she signaled her beasts to charge. And charge they did, their massive bodies crashing into the Soul Lunar sect members with a force that shook the very ground beneath them. Blood spattered the air as the beasts tore through their opponents with razor-sharp claws and teeth. They were hopelessly outmatched, their own beasts no match for woman's fearsome trio. In a matter of minutes, the carnage was over. The woman stood alone, her clothes pristine and her face unblemished. The only sounds that could be heard were the pained moans of the wounded and the sickening crunch of bones beneath her feet. She surveyed the scene with a cold, detached gaze, taking in the corpses of her opponents scattered across the ground like discarded toys. As the woman gazed upon the recumbent lunar blade, she couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement coursing through her veins. She spoke to the supreme weapon, hoping to earn its recognition and unlock its true power. But as the moments ticked by, the lunar blade remained silent, unmoved by her plea. Frustration etched across her face, she clenched her teeth and tightened her fists. Just then, a mocking voice shattered the stillness of the night. The voice from behind pierced the silence, calling her out as rubbish from the Black Moon clan. Enraged and confused, the woman turned around to face her tormentor. Her eyes burned with a fierce intensity as she beheld the Lunar King, striding towards her. She scanned the area, surprised to find that no one was protecting the Lunar King. As the Lunar King drew closer, she felt a surge of confidence, questioning if he truly thought he was invincible with just an emperor-ranked beast by his side. Su's lips curved upwards in a sly smile as he listened to the Blade Moon clan's boasts. They had fallen for the rumor spread by the sassy man. They actually believed that he had an emperor-ranked beast at his disposal when in reality, the rumors were all fake. He couldn't help but chuckle inwardly at their stupidity. They had set up the silent balance here, thinking it would prevent him from summoning a beast of that caliber. Su's voice was steady and composed as he spoke, knowing that his words held weight. He agreed with the woman and understood that relying solely on an emperor-ranked beast would not make him invincible, however, with or without the silent balance will not alter the end result. The woman's expression changed. She had no idea how the Lunar King had discovered the existence of the silent balance. Su locked eyes with her as if he was staring straight into her soul, as he gave her a warning. He advised her to break the teleportation stone and run for her life before his Double Moon clan seized the entire area. The woman was taken aback, her instincts told her to run, but her greed pushed her to take a chance. But as Su moved closer to the recumbent lunar blade, the woman's greed got the better of her. She couldn't resist the temptation of such a powerful weapon, and she ordered her beasts to attack Su. The air crackled with energy as the trio of beasts launched themselves at Su, each unleashing their most powerful abilities. But just as the attacks were about to strike him, Su was suddenly surrounded by a shimmering barrier, protecting him from harm. The woman's eyes widened in shock as she realized the vast power difference between herself and the Lunar King. Su's back was turned to the woman as he patted his chest, relieved that his moon reflection technique had successfully protected him from the onslaught. Man, that was close, he muttered under his breath. He knew that his moon reflection couldn't attack back, but it made for a convincing bluff. The young woman was consumed by a tumultuous storm of embarrassment and jealousy, her emotions swirling within her like a tempestuous hurricane. She put her hands together tightly and clapped, blood dripping out of her sockets as she chanted a mysterious incantation. A circle began to form beneath her feet, and the ground beneath her began to shake violently. A giant black cloud formed in the sky, crackling with dark energy. As the dark clouds gathered overhead, and slithered through the darkness, a massive black serpent emerged, its scales glinting with an otherworldly sheen reflecting the faint moonlight. Its eyes, like orbs of blazing fire, seemed to pierce the very soul of those who gazed upon it. With a hiss that echoed through the skies, the serpent coiled and uncoiled its sinewy body, filling the air with a sense of dread and foreboding. The massive black serpent's fangs were long and sharp, glinting menacingly in the dim light. They were stained with the blood of their victims, a testament to the serpent's deadly nature. The woman had used the silent balance's skill, covering the sense of her supreme beast, rendering it undetectable, and avoiding waking up the recumbent lunar blade. The woman stood before Su, her chest puffed out with pride as she gazed upon her colossal beast. It was the largest and most powerful creature she had ever tamed, and she was eager to prove its might to the Lunar King. But as she looked into Su's eyes, she saw only coldness and detachment, as though the creature before him was nothing more than a mere insect. The woman's heart sank as she wondered if even a supreme-ranked beast could not earn the respect of this enigmatic ruler. As the woman pondered, Su recalled a post he had once read on the internet, a tactic to stare down a massive creature and appear unyielding, even in the face of certain doom. And so, he held his ground and stared back at the woman and her colossal serpent. This way, he can still die diligently. Frustration began to grow within the woman's beast, as it writhed and slithered around, sending tremors through the ground with each movement. The woman, feeling vexed and impatient, pointed a finger at Su, demanding to know why he had not yet summoned his own creature. The colossal serpent, sensing its master's irritation, let out an ear-splitting hiss and charged at Su, its massive jaws open wide as a wave of venom flew toward him. The air crackled with tension as Su stood unflinching in the face of the woman's attack. It was as if the very ground beneath his feet had transformed into a shimmering lake, and from its depths emerged a majestic creature. As the impact of the attack hit, it was like a thunderbolt striking the earth, shattering the ground and sending rubble flying in all directions. But Su remained unscathed, his cool demeanor never once faltering. Deep in his heart, however, he almost shit his pants. He knew that the lunar-typed beast could only exert half of its true power during the morning. And that his lake reflection had absorbed the brunt of the attack. If he had not been prepared, he would have been obliterated. As the dust settled, the woman lay sprawled on the ground, her eyes filled with a sense of despair. How could someone like Su even exist? It was a question that echoed through her mind as she struggled to catch her breath as she watches Su strode purposefully towards the recumbent lunar blade. She wondered if Su's invisible barrier could withstand the lunar blade strike that could knock down a star. As he reached out to grasp the hilt of the lunar blade, the woman's cold grin appeared. With a sudden motion, she disabled the silent balance, unleashing her supreme beast's full senses. In an instant, the lunar blade awakened, its ethereal glow filling the air with a pulsing, otherworldly light. A hand materialized from the misty air and reached towards the gleaming hilt of the blade. With a firm grip, the hand lifted the weapon off the ground, as if it were a featherweight. I will be honest with y'all, this is not how I imagined Guan Yu to look like. As the woman unleashed the full power of the lunar blade, the air crackled with energy, causing a fierce wind to blow through the valley. The ground beneath her feet trembled with each step she took, and her eyes glowed with an eerie light that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She lifted the blade high above her head, its metallic surface gleaming in the sunlight. The air around the woman crackled with electricity, her body glowing with an otherworldly aura that seemed to pulsate like Super Saiyan. Su's heart raced as he felt the intensity of her energy, wondering if even he could withstand such an attack. Suddenly the barrier protecting him disappeared, and the lake reflection turned into her regular form, hiding behind Su. Su knew that the woman's power is over 9,000, and is to go even further beyond. As he turned his head, he was stunned to see the woman from the Black Moon clan being wrapped up in a bizarre shape that resembled a giant, coiled poop. The moment the woman jumped into the air and unsheathed the lunar blade, it was as if the heavens themselves had opened up to bestow upon her its divine power. The blade hummed with otherworldly energy, and as she swung it with the grace of a dancer, the air erupted in a cacophony of sound that echoed throughout the valley. Su's heart thundered in his chest as he realized the full extent of the woman's power. Her movements were graceful yet deadly, and the air crackled with an energy that threatened to consume everything in its path. Sweat beaded on Su's forehead as he struggled to come up with a plan of action, but he knew in his heart that there was no way he could defend against such an attack. With a desperate cry, Su called out to the heavens, his voice echoing through the valley like a prayer. "Heavenly Lunar, please come and save me," he screamed. Let us turn back the clock to just a few minutes ago when the Seoul Lunar Sect students had teleported outside of the zone. Their bodies were badly battered and bruised, their clothes torn and bloodied, as they protested against the academy. They claimed that a woman from the academy had attacked them, condemning the academy's actions and demanding justice. The elder of the Soul Lunar sect stood with her hand on her forehead, her eyes closed in deep thought. She instructed her students to calm down and then explained to them that the woman who had attacked them was not from the academy, but rather an elite member of the notorious Black Moon clan. The elder's gaze then shifted to the woman guarding the entrance, wondering why she seemed so calm. Did she not care about the safety of the Lunar King? Suddenly the woman's bell started ringing, jolting her out of her reverie. She opened her eyes and peered into the entrance, sensing that the recumbent lunar blade had been awakened. Without hesitation, she sprinted away from the entrance and demanded everyone to fall back. She could sense the powerful energy emanating from the lunar blade. But there was something else, another unfamiliar and incredibly powerful energy that seemed to be lurking in the shadows. Meanwhile, back in the zone, Lake Reflection shielded Sue from the raining rubble, her body acting as a protective barrier against the onslaught of debris. Sue couldn't help but wonder why the deer hadn't appeared yet. Could it be that the silent balance had insulated all sound, rendering the deer unable to hear his cries for help? He didn't have time to dwell on it, so he pulled out his phone and quickly sent a message to the deer for assistance. But as he clicked send, the woman launched her attack, descending closer toward Sue with each passing moment. He could feel the heat emanating from her otherworldly aura, his heart racing as he tried to come up with a plan. With no other options left, he outstretched his hand and pointed towards the woman's. Oh, bite. As the two energy collided, the impact caused a massive explosion. The shockwave spread throughout the valley, shattering rocks and uprooting trees, the force that blasted everything in its way. The cloaked woman slowly emerged from the bizarre shape that resembled a giant, coiled poop. She looked around, scanning the shattered ruins of the land for any trace of the Lunar King. The air was thick with the stench of destruction, and the ground trembled beneath her feet with each step she took. The lunar blade floated in the air, its metallic surface gleaming in the sunlight. She couldn't sense any trace of the Lunar King, and her heart raced as she began to wonder if he had been reduced to nothing but dust. Lost in thought, the woman pondered her next move. She knew that her brilliant scheme had triggered the recumbent lunar blade, but what did that mean for the Lunar King? Roughly speaking, rounding everything off, it must have meant that she had defeated him. A surge of disbelief washed over her, and she covered her face in shock and excitement. The end. As the woman stood there, her body convulsing with laughter, she couldn't help but relish in the memory of the Lunar King's final moment. Even now, the thought of him staring at his phone as he faces his final moment sent her into fits of hysterics. Covering her face with her hands, she could feel the tears streaming down her cheeks, as she basked in the sweet satisfaction of her victory. She let out a triumphant shout, announcing her victory to the world. Suddenly, her laughter was interrupted by a blinding light emanating from the lunar blade. The woman's heart leaped in her chest as she watched in awe as the blade began to glow with otherworldly energy. This could only mean one thing: the blade had been awoken for a second time. But her jubilation was short-lived, as the blade's glow began to intensify, and the woman was engulfed in a blinding light. When the light subsided, the woman found herself standing amidst a pile of serpentine corpses, their writhing bodies reminding her of nothing more than a pile of shit. As she gazed into the distance, she could see the Lunar King emerging from the settling dust, his pristine clothing untouched by even a single speck of dirt. But it was the figure standing behind him that truly caught her attention, a towering figure, its majestic antlers reaching towards the sky. For a moment, the woman was filled with despair. What hope did she have against such a powerful foe? But then, she remembered the teleportation stone that she had been clutching tightly in her hand. With trembling fingers, she pulled it out of her pocket and prepared to make her escape. But before she could go, there was one last thing she needed to see: the Lunar King's beast. She knew it might be her only chance to witness this magnificent creature, and she wasn't about to let it pass her by. The woman standing before her was a breathtaking sight, with an ethereal beauty that was otherworldly. Her flowing hair was as white as newly fallen snow, cascading down her back like a river of silver. Her skin was as pale as the moon, and it was the magnificent antlers atop her head that truly took one's breath away. The antlers curled elegantly into the air, like a crown of ivory, enhancing her captivating presence. A gem of stunning beauty adorned her forehead, radiating a mesmerizing array of colors. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief as she took in the massive creature before her. The deer towered over her serpent, easily 5 times larger and more imposing. She had never encountered such a creature in all her years as a beast tamer, and a sense of hopelessness washed over her. Looking up at the Lunar King, she couldn't help but wonder how a one-star beast tamer could possibly harness the true power of such a magnificent beast. It all seemed like a cruel joke. Meanwhile, Sue was equally stunned by the little deer's transformation. From cute and cuddly to a breathtakingly beautiful creature, Sue couldn't help but wonder if the deer would one day be as alluring as the female phantom lurking behind them. But his thoughts were interrupted as the deer's voice broke through, urgently questioning if he had the plan to stop the recumbent lunar blade. The last thing they needed was to be attacked again, and Sue was left speechless by the creature's request. Just then, a bolt of lightning struck, and Sue's heart raced as he realized he had already come into contact with the deadly blade. With a sense of urgency, he frantically pulled out his lunar book and quickly scrolled to the page containing information on the recumbent lunar blade. He needed to act fast if they were going to make it out of this alive. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally stumbled upon a passage that described a mythical creature dating back to ancient times. The words leaped off the page, painting a vivid picture of the beast's relentless pursuit of her lost scabbard since the shattering of the moonlight. For millennia, the creature had scoured every corner of the land, tirelessly searching for the elusive scabbard that had been taken from her. Her search had become a never-ending cycle of sleep and wakefulness, and her determination had never wavered. But despite her tireless efforts, the scabbard remained out of her grasp. As time wore on, the creature grew weary of her endless quest and eventually withdrew from the world, refusing to communicate with any living beings. Under the description, the book also indicated that there's another piece of the weapon, the scabbard, which is currently locked. Sue's mind raced like a high-speed bullet train, considering every possible way to communicate with the enigmatic lunar blade. The gleaming blade was poised in an attack stance, ready for any threat that dared to approach her. Sue could feel the energy pulsing through the air, charged with an otherworldly force that made his hair stand on end. Suddenly, the lunar blade's eye snapped open, a fiery glow emanating from within. As the woman from the Black Moon clan fled back to her shelter, the lunar blade exchanged a meaningful glance with a deer, their energies colliding in midair like a symphony of light and sound. Sue knew that he had to act quickly before the opportunity slipped away. With steady steps, he approached the lunar blade, his hands outstretched in a gesture of peace. "Are you looking for your scabbard, Frosty of the Waxing Moon?" Sue asked, his voice firm and commanding. "Bear with me here, this is impossible to properly translate, for future reference, we will be calling it just by the scabbard." Back to the story, the lunar blade was clearly struck by Sue's words, her eye widening with curiosity. Sue took a deep breath and swore on behalf of his title as the Lunar King, promising to bring the scabbard to her within 3 years. But there was a catch. In exchange, she had to agree to one condition. The lunar blade knew exactly what Sue was thinking. Slowly, she closed her eyes, allowing Sue's hand to penetrate the protective barrier around her. Lake Reflection turned into a tranquil lake and began to roil and churn, the once calm waters transforming into a swirling vortex of power. The lunar blade, now circling within the miniature tornado, seemed to be bowing to Sue, acknowledging him as her new master. With a sudden gust of wind, the lunar blade descended and plunged itself into Sue's waiting body. Sue felt a rush of energy course through him, his body vibrating with newfound strength. The deer, now looking at Sue, knew that this news will surely cause a wave throughout the realm. The woman, who had been observing from a distance, was stunned. She knew that tens of thousands of beast tamers throughout history had tried and failed to capture the recumbent lunar blade. It was said that the blade could not be destroyed, but the moment she become one's contract beast, thus her life will be held tightly with its owner, and the only way to make a contract with it was to prove oneself as an unbeatable warrior. The woman knew with unwavering conviction that she had to transmit this message back to the nefarious Black Moon clan, even if it meant sacrificing her own life to do so. She had no choice but to take drastic measures. With a fierce determination blazing in her eyes, she summoned her colossal serpent with a resounding roar and charged recklessly toward Sue, fueled by desperation and a fierce desire to complete her mission. Sue turned around and locked eyes with the woman, instantly realizing that she had seen too much. Without hesitation, the deer unleashed a devastating blast of purple energy from her mouth, which surged forward and obliterated everything in its path, including the colossal serpent and even an entire mountain. The impact was so forceful that the shock waves rippled through the air and the ground, causing everything to tremble in its wake. As the dust settled, the woman coughed up blood, realizing that she had finally pieced everything together and uncovered the true identity of the white flower deer. She knew that she had to flee immediately, so she reached into her pocket and retrieved a teleportation stone. However, she needed to create a diversion to distract Sue and the white flower deer. Summoning her 3 high-ranking beasts, she sent them charging towards Sue and the white flower deer. The woman's heart pounded furiously in her chest as she desperately pressed down on the teleportation stone, hoping to shatter it without drawing any unwanted attention. But just as she thought she had succeeded, a sudden gust of wind whipped past her outstretched fingers, snatching the stone from her grasp in the blink of an eye. To her horror, she saw the wet noodle-level flicker butterfly fluttering away from her, its tiny wings beating furiously as it carried the stone back to Sue. The woman's heart sank as she realized the depth of her folly, realizing too late that she had underestimated the Lunar King and his cunning tactics. Sue's eyes gleamed with malevolent delight as he looked upon the captured teleportation stone, smirking as he remarked, "Who would ever pay attention to a flicker butterfly in a battle between supreme-ranked beasts, right?" The woman knew that she had made a grave mistake in underestimating her opponent, and she could feel the weight of her impending doom pressing down on her. She regret her foolishness, but still thought it was an honor to fight the Lunar King. With a sudden burst of blinding light, the woman closed her eyes tightly, bracing herself for the inevitable. The deafening silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps echoing through the air. Every head turned towards the entrance, their breaths held in anticipation. Suddenly, a figure appeared, slowly emerging from the darkness like a menacing shadow. It was Sue, his imposing presence commanding attention as he strode toward the gathered crowd. With a piercing gaze, he surveyed the faces before him, his eyes locking onto each and every one of them. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and the anticipation was palpable. All eyes were fixed on Sue, waiting for him to speak. And then, with a voice that carried the weight of a conqueror, he began to speak. His words rang out like a bell, his tone one of finality and power. "The battle is over," he announced, his voice booming through the air. "And as the rightful owner of the recumbent lunar blade, I shall take it under my custody from this day forward." The news of the conquest of the lunar blade reverberated throughout the lunar faction, sending shock waves that reached even the distant southern continent. In the holy Tsangyu sect, amidst a tranquil natural hot spring encircled by blooming sakura trees, a woman indulged in its soothing embrace. Her serene moment was abruptly interrupted by an urgent summons from her subordinate, bearing tidings of the lunar blade's capture. As the Tsangyu emperor cupped her hands, holding a handful of water, she displayed a remarkable lack of surprise. To her, it was evident that the Lunar King was the chosen one. After all, the Lunar King is just like her, beloved by the heaven itself, born as a prodigy beast tamer, commanding an emperor-ranked beast. Moreover, the Lunar King's crescent eyes possessed the uncanny ability to glimpse through the veil of existence, perceiving all that lay within the vast realms of the world. Curiosity filled her mind as she pondered over whom the heavens truly favored. A mischievous smirk graced her lips as she swiftly commanded her subordinate to cancel the preparations for the lunar goddess festival. It seemed she had a different plan in mind. Meanwhile, on the shore that connected the central continent with the northern expanse, a mysterious figure cloaked in black surveyed the vast ocean. Standing in silence, the person listened as his loyal maid informed of an imminent arrival of a VIP. With an air of calmness, the caped individual inquired of the maid whether she believed he would once again lose to the Lunar King. The maid, though the sole remaining officer, lowered her head and replied that she had never doubted his ability to defeat the Lunar King and restore glory to the Black Moon clan. Moments later, ripples disrupted the peaceful water's surface, and from within emerged 2 women, each with an aura of undeniable power. Representing the formidable Ninth Inferno clan, the 2 women arrived to forge an alliance with the man, united in their goal to overthrow the Lunar King. Assuring them of the plan's success, the man exuded confidence as they set forth towards the Lunar Beast Taming Academy. Inside the museum, the esteemed heavenly lunar was taken aback upon learning that the Lunar Goddess Festival was on the horizon, an event that occurred only once every 1,000 years. Su, overcome with dismay, covered his face as a message from the Academy's principal flashed on his screen, notifying him about the impending festival. However, it was crucial to understand that this festival was anything but joyous. Once it commenced, selected beast tamers from the lunar faction would be forced into a dogfight, battling until the bitter end. The ultimate victor would claim the illustrious title of the Lunar King. The principal meticulously explained the festival's rules to Su, emphasizing that it will not end until a winner is selected. As the conversation unfolded, the principal revealed an intriguing anticipation for the impending duel between Su and the Zhongyu Emperor in 3 years. Su's expression gradually shifted from surprise to speechlessness. Each participants will be tracked, enabling their location the entire duration of the festival. To compound matters, the previous Lunar King had made a promise to the principal, vowing to protect 2 additional student attendees. Observing Su's jaw dropped in disbelief, the compassionate deer extended her support, assuring him that there would be ample rewards awaiting him. These rewards would provide him with the means to grow stronger, ensuring he would be well prepared when the duel arrives. In addition, she revealed an extraordinarily rare opportunity that lay within the Lunar Goddess Festival, an elusive chance to obtain a missing page from the Lunar Book. Su's ears perked up in curiosity, for he had never heard of this. Intrigued, he listened attentively as the deer explained the significance of each page within the Lunar Book. Possessing a single page allowed its owner to contract with a dozen additional beasts. However, in Su's case, he possesses not just a single page, but an entire book. As Su pondered how others could acquire pages from the Lunar Book when he already possessed the entire volume, a yawn escaped the deer out of sheer boredom. She implored Su to request the keeper for more frequent excursions outdoors. Observing Su's lack of response, she had butted him, napping him out of his daydreams. Expressing her desire to soak up some much-needed vitamin D from the sun and perhaps assist him during the Lunar Goddess Festival, she awaited a reaction. Finding none, she turned around and discovered Su transfixed by the cracks in the wall. After leaving the Moon Lab, Su trudged wearily towards his residence. Moments later, he received a message on his phone containing the information of the 2 student attendants. The first one was by a 16-year-old princess hailing from the prestigious Holy Bai family in the western region. Surprisingly, she possessed a dormant supreme contracted beast, although her current level was too low to awaken it. The second attendant was Yao, also 16 years old and a princess from the Sapphire Moon Empire in the northern lands. Su promptly shared the details of the 2 girls with the deer. After going through the information, Su sighed and felt a headache. The backgrounds of the 2 individuals were anything but simple. Just then, a message from Deer appeared on the communicator. She expressed great interest with Bai and offered a helping paw. On the other side of the school, in a garden, Bai and Sandra were sitting on a swing, swaying back and forth. Bai seemed downcast and dejected. She had been excitedly preparing to witness the magnificent prowess of the lunar blade, but to her dismay, she discovered that the lunar blade had already been tamed. They let out a sigh and started walking towards the campus plaza. A moment later, as the 2 dispirited girls left the garden, a small and adorable deer suddenly popped out from the nearby bushes. She had memorized Bai's appearance and scent. Suddenly, the sky began to rain, accompanied by a chilling breeze. The already dim sky grew even darker and colder. The little deer looked up and saw a colossal, blue water creature emerging slowly from the clouds thousands of meters above. And it descended straight down. In a matter of seconds, accompanied by torrential rain, the blue water creature grew larger and larger, and the expression on the little deer's face became gloomy. She gradually witnessed the 7 stars engraved on the creature's body, indicating a supreme beast. The enormous giant stood before Bai and Sandra, who were both soaking wet, and said to the 2 girls, "You have 10 seconds to summon your beasts." The 2 girls had never experienced the pressure of a supreme-level beast. Bai and Sandra were petrified with fear, unable to move. At the Lunar Beast Taming Academy, in front of the entrance to a royal mansion, several maids followed a glamorous and elegant young girl. The girl had long emerald green hair and eyes like green gemstones. She was Yao, the fourth princess of the Sapphire Moon Empire. At this moment, as she looked at the falling rain in the sky, Yao's expression was somewhat displeased. One of the maids stepped forward to hold an umbrella for her as they headed towards the campus. Along the way, Yao's gaze constantly surveyed the small beasts passing by. Suddenly, a petite and radiant flicker butterfly appeared, getting drenched by the heavy rain. Yao extended her right hand, allowing the flicker butterfly to perch in her palm. Witnessing this scene, one of the maids furrowed her brow and said, "Your Highness, this is a low-level beast." Yao, dissatisfied, glanced at the maid and remarked, "Low-level beasts are so adorable. Who knows, perhaps even the Lunar King plays with these cute low-level beasts at home every day." Suddenly, a crisis emerged. All the maids immediately entered a state of alertness. Unbeknownst to them, not far away, a black-haired woman with long horns was walking towards them, wearing a sly grin. The maid captain instinctively realized that this woman was dangerous, but Yao, from behind, retorted, "Get your ugly ass out of my face." The woman with the horned head expression changed slightly, appearing displeased. She summoned her beast and let out a grin, remarking on how she was assigned to deal with a young girl. As the gazelle appeared, all the maids displayed expressions of facing a formidable enemy. It turned out to be the supreme-level evil-eyed gazelle. At this moment, Yao finally realized that this woman was from the Black Moon clan. At the Moonlight Beast Taming Academy, in the campus plaza, thousands of students had gathered, all of whom had received notifications to come. Standing on the central stage in the campus plaza, Vice Principal Claire looked around but couldn't find Yao and Bai. She suddenly had a bad feeling. Another vice principal, Eric, also furrowed his brow. Claire nodded helplessly, picked up the microphone, and introduced the rules of the Moon Goddess Festival to all the students. No one knew the exact starting time of the festival, but they had to be prepared in advance. Claire began, stating that once the Moon Goddess Festival began, beast tamers from the lunar faction would be selected to participate in sacrificial battles to please the ancient gods. The winners of each battle would receive unimaginable rewards. The ultimate rule of the Moon Goddess Festival was that, suddenly another voice began to speak, everyone would fight each other until only one person remained alive. That person would be the true Moon King of this era. Amidst the stunned and incredulous gazes of the entire academy, Vice Principal Claire's expression became extremely peculiar, and Eric was equally shocked. However, the crowd quickly realized that the last sentence wasn't uttered by Claire at all. Under Claire's furious glare, a floating golden sphere with a face appeared from the crowd, and it had 7 stars embedded onto its forehead. The two principals instantly reacted and shouted, "Everyone, retreat immediately." But before they could even react, a golden flash covered everyone's vision. A violent explosion shook the entire plaza, instantly obliterating the entire square and reducing nearby buildings to ashes. The intense gusts of wind made it impossible to keep their eyes open. Amidst the deafening roar, the two vice principals felt a sense of despair. There were thousands of students here. After a few seconds, as the smoke slowly dispersed, Claire wore an expression of disbelief. Everyone present widened their eyes, unable to believe that the surrounding buildings had been destroyed, yet they themselves were still alive, completely unharmed. The golden-faced sphere, realizing that its attack had been absorbed, understood that the Lunar King had intervened. And indeed, Su was watching it closely. The golden sphere's tone remained oddly calm, as if it had expected this outcome. At this moment, Su was silently among the crowd of students, glaring at the golden sphere with eyes full of anger. If it weren't for Moon Reflection's newest ability that increased the shield capacity threefold, both Su and all the students would likely have perished here. The power of the explosion was already comparable to that a strike of the lunar blade. These individuals were resorting to such ruthless tactics just to lure out the Lunar King. Su silently stared at the golden sphere, seething with anger. Suddenly, red lightning appeared in the void near the golden sphere. The next second, a woman with a pair of shining wings on her back and a halo above her head appeared high in the sky above the plaza. She too had 7 stars on her chest. The golden-haired woman immediately questioned the golden sphere next to her, expressing her concern that the sphere nearly killed these students. It wasn't their mission to start a war. The golden sphere nonchalantly replied that the Lunar King wouldn't care about the lives of these insignificant beings. Meanwhile, as the two conversed, Claire suddenly realized something. Many years ago, as an exchange student, she had traveled to the Western lands and encountered a certain legend. Glaring at these two supreme-level beasts, she wondered if it was the same individual who had intervened. Claire shouted loudly, demanding to know why they were attacking them. The golden-haired woman sighed but didn't answer, instead giving Claire time to evacuate the students. The students who had come to their senses immediately scattered in a frenzy, fleeing in all directions. The two vice principals knew very well that there was no chance of winning this battle. They were both only level 5 beast masters, no match for the two almighty supreme level beasts. At this moment, while all the students were evacuating, a white-haired young man walked against the crowd and moved towards the two supreme beasts. Within seconds, he had approached the two 7-star supreme-level beasts. Sue sneered at the beast tamer hiding in the back, who didn't dare reveal his true identity, instead commanding the two beasts to wreak havoc. Sue's eyes turned icy, his face grim and dark. With each advancing step, ripples spread out beneath his feet, creating a gentle wave on the quiet surface of the lake. The serene lake reflected the enchanting moonlight, and from the water emerged a jade-green blade as if made of ethereal emerald. The moment the lunar blade appeared, it opened her eyes wide, fixating on the enemies ahead with a fierce gaze. The two supreme-tier beasts' expressions drastically changed, but before they could react, the terrifying blade's radiance was already within reach. Under the overwhelming pressure that surged like a tsunami, the next moment witnessed a stellar explosion. The blade's radiance soared into the sky, rendering everyone blind as they could see nothing but the blinding light. The terrifying aura swept through, causing the buildings ahead to be blown away. It took over a minute for the dust in the air to gradually settle. Claire stood there in astonishment, gazing at the deep abyss beneath her feet, the unfathomable crater. The two supreme-level beasts were deeply embedded in the pit, and from the depths, a violent coughing sound emerged. Despite their condition, they seemed to be unafraid of death. The golden-haired woman slowly extended her arms, and several small meteorites appeared around her. The golden sphere continued to emit dazzling radiance. In response to the threat from the enemy, the lunar blade opened her eyes once again, unleashing an even stronger aura. In an instant, as if starlight shattered from the blade, resonating with a resounding cry. A massive surge of emerald-green energy soared into the sky, causing the golden-haired woman's pupils to uncontrollably contract in fear. Then, everything in the surrounding area vanished into nothingness under the strike of the lunar blade. The shockwave spread in all directions like an atomic bomb. After a few minutes, the night sky regained its calm. It was at this moment that one of the students suddenly saw something beneath the moon, a disc-like object, resembling a second moon. As the smoke cleared, two figures emerged. The golden sphere transformed into a woman, and she hysterically questioned why the golden-haired woman had created a full moon. Tears streamed down the face of the golden-haired woman, as she felt that death was not frightening in theory, but when faced with it, she instinctively reacted. Her ability was to create a 5-minute lasting full moon, under the influence of the full moon, which allowed her to withstand a strike from the lunar blade. In the next second, a deep breath sent shivers down their spines, confirming their worst fears. True to the influence of the full moon, a new crisis unfolded. They turned their heads abruptly and beheld a gigantic, long-eared bunny. Under the shimmering silver glow of the full moon, the night sky brightened, and an immense bunny stood before the two supreme beasts. Its tail swayed from side to side, while the two supreme beasts wore grave expressions. Could it be a supreme beast? But it sort of looks like a low-level moonlight bunny. What was even more terrifying was the strange transformation of the lunar blade under the moonlight's illumination. It was now enveloped in an ethereal, flowing purple aura. They knew too well that they wouldn't last a single minute under such circumstances. In that fleeting moment, an entirely unpredictable event occurred. The lunar blade swung its large sword and struck down towards the gigantic moonlight bunny. However, the next second, the lunar blade slowly turned around, casting a glance at them. Yao had just stepped out with a group of maids when they were suddenly taken control of by the followers of the Black Moon clan. They found themselves trapped within a black void. In front of them stood a formidable high-level beast, the evil-eyed gazelles. Its 5 pairs of eyes emitted red laser beams that instantly obliterated all the high-level beasts in their path. Yao had no choice but to summon her supreme beast, the azure-winged eagle. In an instant, a gigantic eagle covered in green scales appeared. The horned woman sneered, mocking Yao's beast. But within seconds, the azure-winged serpent's wings were riddled with dozens of holes. It trembled in agony, emitting a painful howl. The horned woman explained that the azure-winged eagle did not belong to the moonlight attribute and was incompatible with Yao's powers, which hindered its growth. The azure-winged eagle was meant to protect Yao as a member of the royal family. In reality, Yao had come to the Lunar Beast Taming Academy to find a true supreme beast of the lunar attribute before reaching adulthood. As Yao was unsure of what to do next, the captain of the maid's high-level beast suddenly swept Yao up with its tail and sprinted towards the rear. The captain intended to sacrifice her own life to buy time for the princess to escape. The horned woman yawned, sneering contemptuously. With a casual wave of her hand, the antelope beside her opened its mouth, and multiple red beams shot forth, piercing through the bodies of all the maids. The attack also hit the captain's beast. Yao crashed to the ground, pale and despairing, her gaze turning towards the rear. Half of the azure-winged eagle's body had already vanished, leaving a trail of corpses in its wake. Meanwhile, the horned woman approached Yao with a satisfied smile. She walked slowly, as if relishing the torment she was about to inflict. Yao crawled desperately backward, and a flicker butterfly flew out from her palm, frantically flapping its wings in midair. The poor flicker butterfly had been held tightly by Yao and nearly suffocated. Finally able to take a breath and witness the presence of the flicker butterfly, both the dark-haired woman and the evil-eyed gazelles were bewildered. Suddenly, they both fell to the ground, completely paralyzed and trembling uncontrollably. How could it be? How could there be a flicker butterfly here? Upon seeing the flicker butterfly, the horned woman lost control of her emotions. Yao, unsure of what was happening, quickly stood up and ran towards the distance. The horned woman was unable to do anything, lacking even the strength to lift a finger. She and the evil-eyed gazelles clung to each other tightly. To the followers of the Black Moon clan, the flicker butterfly seemed to be an omen of nightmares. They would never forget that night, and the shadow it cast lingered for years to come, haunting them endlessly. The rain poured heavily, accompanied by howling winds. Before 2 female students stood a massive rain giant. The girls had never encountered such overwhelming pressure before and were momentarily paralyzed with fear, unable to move. The rain giant started his countdown. He had already reached 3. A deer observed from the shadows, realizing that the blue water sect had arrived. She knew that behind every 7 stars beast represented the presence of an emperor. After a period of silent and despairing anticipation, the countdown finally came to an end. The rain giant raised one hand and said, "What a pity that you cannot control your own beasts. Farewell." With those words, he conjured a ball of water in his hand and waved it gently, causing a sweeping flood that overturned the 2 girls. However, the next second, the girls inexplicably floated to the surface, surrounded by a cloud as if it were a lifebuoy. The rain giant looked around warily, realizing that this ability was not mentioned in the intelligence reports. From the bushes behind, a petite figure appeared. Under the astonished gazes of everyone present, a beautiful little deer emerged. Riding on the cloud, it floated slowly towards them. Bai and Sandra were dumbfounded. Was it the intermediate-level white flower deer from the academy who had saved them? Sensing the immense aura emanating from the other side, the rain giant's expression turned serious and earnest. He slowly assumed a more respectful posture and introduced himself. He is Rain Giant, hails from the Water faction, the 3rd beast under the command of the Emperor Qinqiu. Upon hearing this title, the little deer did not appear surprised. Instead, she shook her head and glanced around with curiosity. She then asked, "Didn't that guy Qinqiu come with you?" Faced with the deer's question, the rain giant was first taken aback by her impolite reference to the emperor as that guy. He then became somewhat displeased, but replied, "Of course, Emperor Qianqiu is present, but this is a battle among the supremes, and the emperor cannot interfere." The little deer raised her hoof and smiled, saying, "That's good then." The next moment, something shocking happened. The little deer stood up straight and even arrogantly placed her hands on her hips, saying, "Actually, I'm the type who bullies the weak and fears the strong." The rain giant clasped his hands together, and in an instant, the heavens and earth trembled. A massive amount of water poured down from the sky, and in the center of the water, the little deer suddenly felt an unparalleled pressure. The next moment, the deer's body disappeared like a cloud, only to reappear and solidify. Witnessing this, the rain giant's expression became solemn. He tightly clenched his hands as the rain in the sky converged and compressed, forming a vortex of water. Suddenly, it shot towards the deer, creating a deep pit on the ground. Believing he had defeated the deer, the dark clouds began to dissipate. The rain giant looked up at the sky, where a bright, full moon appeared. He was surprised that the Black Moon clan had summoned a full moon without his knowledge. Thankfully, he had defeated the deer, otherwise, as a water-based beast, how could he have fought a supreme-level beast, lunar-type beast under the full moon? He grew angry and wanted an explanation. Just then, he suddenly felt an immense pressure behind him. He stopped and slowly turned around, unable to believe what he saw. Various complex emotions flooded his mind. Standing beside the deep pit was a beautiful white-haired woman, with antler-like branches protruding from her head, making her even more eye-catching. The white-haired woman gazed at him with her beautiful purple gem-like eyes and spoke, suggesting they wait until the full moon ended before fighting. She claimed that she didn't actually need the full moon to defeat the rain giant. Hearing this, the rain giant became enraged. His anger burned within him as he charged fiercely towards the white-haired woman. But the next moment, his colossal body suddenly froze. From the void behind the white-haired woman, a horn that stretched hundreds of meters appeared out of thin air, piercing through the rain giant and piercing the firmament. The rain giant looked at the white-haired woman in despair. The white-haired woman looked disdainfully and repeated once again that she didn't actually want to take advantage of him during the full moon. The rain giant tried to say something, but no words came out. Then, his body dissipated into the sky. 3 minutes ago, the campus plaza lay in ruins, its once vibrant structures reduced to rubble. Suspended in mid-air, the lunar blade, watching as the two formidable supreme beasts had already been vanquished, leaving behind a chaotic aftermath. In its current state, bathed in the ethereal glow of the full moon, the lunar blade entered a state of frenzied rampage. Abruptly, a sound pierced the air from behind. Startled, she spun around to behold a shocking sight, a dismembered body of the Moonlight Bunny, its once lifeless halves slowly reuniting in a mesmerizing display of regeneration. In a matter of moments, it stood before her, with an explosive burst of energy. The Moonlight Bunny unleashed a powerful punch towards the lunar blade, who desperately attempted to defend itself but was overpowered and driven forcefully into the ground. At that precise moment, along a narrow forest trail, 3 figures draped in black cape gradually emerged. Enveloped in their intense conversation, they were caught entirely off guard as the Moonlight Bunny and Lunar Blade descended upon them from the heavens, unleashing an onslaught without any forewarning. The sudden turn of events left the 3 individuals in a state of complete shock. They thought they'd been discovered by the Lunar King. The men in black, who's the sole successor from the Black Moon clan, holding on to a glimmer of hope, tried to reassure themselves that it couldn't possibly be the Lunar King. But before they could even finish their thoughts, the Moonlight Bunny surprised them by reaching into its mouth with its ears and pulling out Sue, who had been swallowed just moments ago. Their breath caught in their throats as their bewildered eyes met the Lunar King. Taking a swift look around, Sue roughly assessed the strength and identity of the trio. Faced with Sue's questioning gaze, the 3 individuals fell into an eerie silence. The woman with blue hair, visibly nervous to the point of suffocation, finally found the courage to break the silence after what felt like an eternity. Cold sweat slowly trickled down her forehead as she mustered the strength to respond. She claimed to be a beast tamer from the Underworld Path Guild, present solely to greet the almighty Lunar King. She emphasized that she had no intentions of starting a war against the Lunar King. However, just as the tense words left the blue-haired woman's lips, one of the men in black erupted in a shout, declaring, "I have come to wage war upon you." The provocation from the Black Moon instantly captured Sue's undivided attention. Although Sue's expression remained unchanged, they could still feel the chilling gaze of the Lunar King piercing through them. In an instant, their entire body trembled uncontrollably. Stepping back cautiously, the man in black warned that he will seek revenge and bring about their defeat. Like a clown, the man in black rambled on, engaging in a soliloquy, while Sue remained completely unresponsive, his eyes icy and fixed upon the group. The bone-chilling fear that gripped the room brought the man in black thoughts back to that fateful night 3 years ago when the headquarters of the Black Moon clan was annihilated. It was the same gaze Sue had stared into, devoid of mercy, brimming only with coldness. In reality, Sue may appear cold and aloof, with an air of superiority, but deep inside, a storm of emotions is raging. Oh, he doesn't remember anything, it's as if he has never seen this person before. Furthermore, he can no longer control the lunar blade. Seeking an excuse, under the torment and anguish inflicted to the 3 individuals, Sue speaks again. Their pitiful struggles are unbearable to witness, yet he is willing to give them a chance. However, in exchange for provoking him and disrupting the academy, the Double Moon clan will relentlessly hunt them down. But if they can escape unscathed, Sue will pretend that nothing ever happened. Sensing the impending eruption of the lunar blade's terrifying power, Sue must first intimidate his opponents. In the next moment, a radiant burst of light emanates from the unleashed attack of the lunar blade, instantly enveloping the entire forested mountain. 10 minutes later, a deep and unfathomable chasm has been carved into the mountainside behind the academy, obliterating all the trees and rocks, leaving the 3 individuals struggling to crawl out from the soil in a wretched state. The 3 individuals had no choice but to abandon their search for the Lunar King and flee in all directions, avoiding capture by the members of the Double Moon clan. As Sue returned to the academy, the once bustling area of the teaching buildings had turned into ruins overnight. Through this battle, he discovered that not only the little deer, the lunar blade, or the moonlight bunny, but it seemed that they could all easily defeat the supreme beasts. He had always thought of himself as weak, but somehow he had unconsciously formed contracts with many powerful beasts. Suddenly, a deer's cry came from behind, and before he knew it, the little deer fiercely tackled him to the ground. According to her, just encountering the supreme beast was truly terrifying, and she had almost been defeated. If it weren't for her protection, those 2 students would have died. The deer, in a tearful manner, spoke while simultaneously boasting and tattling. Midway through her speech, she realized that she had forgotten to revert to her original form. Just as she was about to escape, Sue placed his hand gently on her head, with a gentle touch. Smiling, Sue said, "Accompany me on a trip to the Double Moon clan's headquarters. I have something to discuss with one of the overlords." Overlord? The deer recalled the novels she had read. Could this be meeting the parents? Is everything progressing too quickly? Blushing, the little deer nodded dazedly. A floating island in the sky, with a colossal butterfly wing behind it. This is the headquarters of the Double Moon clan. Leading a team, a pink-haired girl named Tao, an officer of the Tsangua sect, gazed at the airborne island. Her mission today was to find the treasure of the Eastern Domain Emperor, said to be located within the headquarters of the Double Moon sect. Upon entering the island, she expected it to be a solemn and sacred place, but instead, it turned out to be a tourist paradise. Envious, she watched the bustling crowd of tourists and thought to herself, how much money must they make in a day? A white-haired man wearing a butterfly mask walked past them, accompanied by an exquisitely adorned deer beside his arms. In his hand, he held a skewer of roasted meat. The deer noticed that the girl leading the team was Tao, a devoted fan of the Tsangua Emperor. Upon learning that Sue had described the Tsangua Emperor as old and fat, Tao had been incessantly criticizing him online, often insulting the Northern Territory and the Double Moon clan. The deer had once engaged in verbal battles with Tao online, eventually blocking her. Clenching her tiny hooves, she had wanted to grab Tao and give her a good beating. Observing the deer's excited expression, as if she had caught an internet nemesis, Sue shook his head helplessly and amusedly. How could he resort to physical violence just because of an online argument? Sue smiled and asked the deer if there was anything else she wanted to do. The deer, being innocent, quickly shifted her attention upon hearing about something fun. Before long, they arrived at a food street, and the deer pointed to a sign that read, "Food Challenge." Sue was speechless. He hadn't expected the deer to be interested in participating in such a game. He pondered the consequences of the next major headline of the Lunar King engaging in such an activity and wondered how he would face others afterward. However, when he saw the deer's immensely excited eyes, Sue couldn't bring himself to refuse her. He reluctantly agreed. To his surprise, a group of people wearing white uniforms hurriedly approached from a distance. The girl among them confidently stated that she was determined to win the championship prize this time. The first place reward was a single drop of Emperor's sacred water, the second place prize was a box of face cream, and the third place prize was hand cream. Sue was astonished at the stark difference in the rewards. He pondered for a moment and realized that the Emperor's sacred water was likely a tear from the cherry blossom pupil, the beloved beast of the Eastern Domain Emperor. Interestingly, that beast also happened to be a butterfly. He wondered who had organized this competition and felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. How could they dare to use items belonging to the Emperor as prizes? Weren't they afraid of the Emperor seeking retribution? The deer couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Isn't this competition organized by your Double Moon clan?" It was supposed to be an act of revenge against the cherry blossom pupil. The deer mentioned that the Double Moon clan had been collecting a large number of delicacies required by butterfly-type beasts recently, which had led to numerous disputes with the Emperor. Hearing this, Sue couldn't help but feel a mix of amusement and frustration. Nonetheless, he decided to participate in the competition for now. A woman wearing an apron stood at the center as the host, addressing the audience of thousands seated at neatly arranged tables. Surprisingly, there were only a few participants among the spectators, as it seemed everyone was hesitant to offend the Emperor and dared not enter the competition. The woman provided a brief explanation of the rules. The pet food used in this competition was incredibly spicy and could only be withstood by supreme-level creatures. Many participants and their beasts displayed expressions of shock and fear, except for the deer, whose eyes suddenly sparkled with excitement. Tao quickly summoned her own beast, a supreme-level flame-type creature named Thousand Flame Powdered Butterfly. Glancing around, she noticed that no other contestants had summoned supreme-level beasts. However, she looked across and was surprised to see a masked man participating in the competition with a mid-level creature that seemed like a white flower deer. Shortly after, the competition began. As the referee announced the start, the small-sized butterfly swiftly grabbed a piece of pet food and swallowed it in one bite. Meanwhile, the other high-level beasts were employing various methods to eat, causing tears to stream down their faces. Despite the somewhat comical scene, everyone was fully engaged in the challenge. Roaming among the various creatures, the deer calmly and leisurely consumed the pet food. Many high-level creatures were overwhelmed by just 2 bites, but the mid-level white deer had already eaten 5 or 6 pieces without showing any signs of discomfort. Tao wasn't oblivious to this, she realized that the deer was actually a supreme-level creature. However, no matter what, she wouldn't accept defeat. 3 minutes later, all the other beasts had already fainted. The powdered butterfly stuck out its tongue after devouring its 30th piece, continuously emitting hot breath. On the other hand, the deer remained unaffected and calm. Sue glanced at the deer and advised, "Don't force yourself. You just ate a bunch of snacks." The deer picked up another piece of pet food and confidently responded, "It's okay. The stomach used for snacks is different from the one used for pet food." Tao couldn't believe her eyes. The deer was completely fine. With no other choice, Tao, as a 4-star beast tamer, summoned another supreme-level creature simultaneously, but they could only last for 5 minutes. She shouted loudly, and behind the pink-haired girl appeared a humanoid creature made of blue flames. Its aura was incredibly formidable, and as soon as it appeared, it grabbed a plate and sucked in over a dozen pieces of pet food. Even the deer was astonished. Wouldn't eating like that cause diarrhea? Soon, Tao took the lead with over 40 pieces consumed. Just when the audience thought Su was about to lose, Su summoned lake reflection. In an instant, as the lake water surged over the dining table, hundreds of pet food disappeared without a trace. This sudden occurrence left the referee wide-eyed in disbelief. Tao sat on the ground, her face filled with shock. Shortly after, the referee announced the results of the competition. In this incredibly eerie atmosphere, the referee escorted Su backstage to receive the prize. A few minutes later, with great respect, the referee called out "Leader" and handed Su a small bottle. Su was surprised that the referee recognized him. The referee also informed Su that the Overlord had awakened and invited him to the main hall to discuss important matters. Su opened the bottle and took a gentle sniff. After a few seconds, his trembling fingers closed the lid again. He turned around and walked away. He opened the lunar book and discovered that the Emperor-ranked beast had been unlocked, granting him 50 chances to draw rewards. The book also introduced the Emperor-ranked butterfly, Cherry Blossom Pupil, with a history spanning over 10,000 years and a combat power approaching that of the Overlord. Su scratched his head, realizing that with such formidable strength, conflicts with the Double Moon clan could be troublesome. Letting out a sigh, he made his way to the main hall. As night fell, he entered the magnificent palace, adorned with golden splendor. Along the way, everyone bowed their heads with devout expressions. Passing through the palace, they reached the end, where a mirror shrouded in thick mist appeared before them. Su promptly stepped forward and passed through the mirror in the blink of an eye, entering another world. Little Deer widened her eyes, experiencing her first encounter with the Overlord. Su nodded solemnly and introduced, "This is the unrivaled Overlord, the supreme guardian of the entire Northern Realm and the revered beast of the Double Moon clan. She is also known as the Protector, the arching moon over the Azure Sea." Upon Su's arrival, a soft female voice resonated from above the moon, saying, "Lunar King, it seems you have finally made up your mind. The Lunar Goddess Festival has been delayed for a full 3 years, awaiting your response. The old ones from the Western Realm are furious, and even the deities are displeased." Upon hearing the voice of the Azure Sea, Su felt a sense of unease. In his memories, the former Lunar King had refused to initiate the Lunar Goddess Festival, seemingly waiting for a certain moment. But Su had actually forgotten about this matter. He coughed twice and said that he had come precisely for this purpose, and the Lunar Goddess Festival could indeed commence. Before that, Su wanted to ask a question. He confidently asked how he could win. Azure Sea remained silent for 10 seconds before giving a slow response. She said that she couldn't intervene during the Lunar Goddess Festival, but wanted to know who his greatest opponent was. Su wasn't entirely sure, but he knew it should be the Emperor Beast of the Black Moon clan. Azure Sea grew somewhat angry upon hearing this, thinking that Su was playing a prank on her. She knew that no Emperor Beast from the Black Moon clan could pose any threat to Su. Su is the chosen one of the moonlight. She didn't want Su to make such jokes. Su, sensing Azure Sea's dissatisfaction, could only nod in agreement. He felt incredibly uncomfortable inside. He hadn't intended it as a joke. As a mere one-star beast tamer, how could he possibly defeat an Emperor Beast? In the next moment, a silver halo shimmered in the air, and a beautiful diamond ring appeared. It was the symbol of the ruler of the Northern Realm and the token of the Lunar Goddess. As long as he wore this ring, the Lunar Goddess Festival would officially begin. Su reluctantly put on the ring, and in the next moment, his figure vanished into thin air, as if the entire world had come to a halt, including the mighty Overlord. Suddenly, an system text box appeared before Su's eyes, stating that the Lunar Goddess Festival had been initiated upon detecting the ring. After a few seconds, the system detected that Su was the bearer of the Lunar Book and could assume a disguised identity. Su looked left and right, only to see darkness surrounding him, with only the interface in front of him displaying his personal information, his name, gender, one-star beast tamer, and appearance. The system offered him 3 templates to choose from for his disguise: Heavenly Lunar, Lunar Blade, or Azure Sea. Su carefully considered his options and realized that he could alter his appearance, and conceal his name, but couldn't hide his beast tamer level. After a moment of contemplation, he decided to choose a stronger disguise and ultimately selected Azure Sea's reflection as his template. In a mysterious and spacious meeting hall within an unknown realm, 5 chairs were placed, each connected to a different passage representing the strongest individuals from 5 regions of the Moonlight faction: East, South, West, North, and Central. The first to appear was an exceptionally beautiful woman with 2 buns on her head, resembling a playful cosplay of Mickey Mouse. She sat down while reciting classic lines from the Moon God Palace. From the passage representing the South, a pink-haired woman emerged. She is Tsang-Yu Emperor and exchanges greetings with the first woman, indicating their familiarity with each other. In the passage representing the West, a petite, golden-haired girl wearing a tiger-patterned robe walked over, yawning as if she had just been interrupted from her slumber. Tsang-Yu Emperor greeted her amiably, and the young girl promptly dozed off on her chair. After a while, a woman with blue skin and blue hair entered the passage representing the East. Despite her slender figure, she stood at an impressive height of over 3 meters. The people from the Moon God Palace looked at her with disdain, questioning the presence of a water element representative in this gathering. However, the blue-haired woman paid no attention to their disapproval and simply stated that the lunar goddess token was in her possession, leaving her with no choice but to be present. With all 4 seats occupied, only the one representing the North remained empty. They had waited for a long time, but no one appeared. The blue-haired woman grew impatient, while the Tsang-Yu Emperor mentioned that only the Lunar King was left. The young girl glanced around and remembered the Lunar King as the mischievous little fellow who caused a scene 3 years ago. The Moon God Palace expressed disdain, considering him to be all talk and no substance. Just as the tension mounted, there was finally movement in the passage representing the North. All eyes turned towards it, and in the next moment, a mysterious figure dressed in silver emerged from the passage. The blue-haired woman and Tsang-Yu Emperor stood up abruptly, unable to believe their eyes. It seemed that the moon had provided them with incorrect guidance. The representative from the North being someone other than the Lunar King was quite unexpected. The newcomer was a beautiful woman with long, silky silver hair. The representative of the Moon God Palace was momentarily stunned, but the woman quickly remarked that it seemed the legend of the Lunar King was indeed false and that there were many who surpassed the Lunar King in strength. She deliberately spoke loudly, carefully observing the expression of the silver-haired woman. However, there was no discernible reaction from her. It appeared that she had no connection to the Lunar King. Internally, Su couldn't help but think that the woman was stunningly beautiful but had a sharp tongue. He had successfully deceived them all with the humanoid form granted by the power of the Lunar Book. The mysterious room now contained all 5 individuals, and finally, a cheerful voice resounded, introducing the once-in-a-millennium Lunar Goddess Festival. They were to select the most trustworthy and strongest individuals in their region to participate. It was forbidden for the 5 of them to engage in combat until all the sacrificial offerings had been defeated. In the end, the voice instructed them to choose their own candidates. Su felt a bit conflicted, as selecting someone might expose his true identity. The woman in blue yawned and directly chose the Emperor rank, cherry blossom pupils. The Moon God Palace also quickly made her selection, opting for the Emperor rank as well. The full moon descended. And the young girl also made her choice, selecting the Emperor rank, first-generation White Saint. Su was already speechless at this point, as these Emperor ranks were incredibly close to the power of an overlord. Suddenly, the previously cheerful female voice issued a warning, urging them to make a choice within 1 minute. Tsang-Yu Emperor gazed at Su, who was still hesitant. Then, a thought occurred to him: what if he chose the Emperor rank of the North, an existence that once existed but whose whereabouts were now unknown? A figure appeared in his mind, and he summoned the Lunar Book, swiftly using it to draw 100 times from the gacha system. Flipping to the encyclopedia entry of the Emperor rank beast. Cloud and Dreams Covenant. Fortunately, Su knew the descendant of Cloud and Dreams Covenant, Heavenly Lunar, who had the opportunity to directly ascend to Emperor rank. The countdown of the female voice began, giving Su 5 seconds to make a choice. If he didn't choose within those 5 seconds, it would be considered forfeit. The North chose the Emperor rank, Cloud and Dreams Covenant, while Empress Tsangyu opted for the supreme rank beast. Was very surprising, since everyone else selected emperor-level beasts. Su carefully recalled the name of the supreme-level beast, and realized that it sounded remarkably similar to the name of the scabbard that Lunar Blade had been searching for. In the moment of teleportation, the golden-haired girl heard the name, Cloud and Dreams Covenant, and seemed to realize something. Her expression underwent a drastic change, devoid of drowsiness, and she looked at Su in absolute astonishment. In an instant, everyone was transported back to their original regions, and the world returned to normal from its paused state. Azure Sea also sensed that the Lunar Goddess Festival had begun and wished Su the best of luck. As she watched Su's departing figure, she silently said that when they met again, the Lunar Goddess Festival might have already ended, hoping that their promise would come true by then. Su's recollection of feeling uncertain and fearful about his own power, as well as his concerns about the other emperors, sparked laughter from Azure Sea. She sensed that Su's memories were gradually returning, and she looked forward to seeing the reaction of the Moon God Palace's members to all of this.